Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for, and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Before them stood the house of their nightmares.
I dreamt of doors and shadows.
Can't see anything. It's scary as fuck.
Hey everybody, happy Sunday. How's it going? Hey Tom Dog. And hey Stefan. Human Sacrifice will be after the show. We'll invite you on in. You can come over and do that. It's going to be a good time. He just ran away, but we'll get him back. We are back for another edition of Owl Light Society, and we haven't had one for a little while because we've all run out of stories, and we were all very busy. Oh my God, there's a wild Raz. Dun, dun, dun. Wait a minute.
Did you just say people ran out of stories?
I said I ran out of stories.
Oh. There's a million stories.
Okay.
Nice. Sorry, the build's got me behind today. We're a week away from opening the haunt, so crazy day.
Hi, Mahana. So tonight we have some guests on with us. From over at the Scuttlebutt Discord, we have Shawn and Peggy and Carpenter. Sorry, I'm like, Shawn and Peggy Carpenter. Shawn is the author of Price of Redemption, and Peggy, I don't actually know the name of your stories. I'm sorry, or what you've written.
Well, I've written a million things, but they're all just sitting in the cloud right now. I'm putting my first book out next year. It's called She Who Storms, and it's a sword and sorcery novel about a woman who goes on a revenge trip.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we also have Channy here with us. She's somebody that I've met through the same Discord, so got a bunch of spooky people here tonight.
Hell yeah.
I think we're going to have a good time. So, Raz, holy shit, I wasn't expecting you. I was all over in the driver's seat. What's up?
I told you guys I was coming. I was just running a little bit behind. But yeah, I'm just tired. You know, we get, like I said, a week before the haunt opens for our dress rehearsal family and friends night. So, you know, blood to throw around, monsters to finish building, actors to teach things to. Just, you know, crazy shit as usual.
And there's a kitten. Johnny got a kitten. Yes. Yay.
She has a kitten. She's not that old yet.
Oh.
This is Hecate.
Aw. This is Ratatosker. He's not as cute. He's an alcoholic too, so, you know, gotta get, wait, since I'm drinking, he gets some Crown tonight. We get him little bottles. So, and Tulu. Friday has a young one who, a very young one, who goes to bed with Cthulhu as one of his keepers, and he calls him Tulu. So we're just like, how's Tulu? Writing birthday stories about Cthulhu and stuff.
That's perfect. That's awesome.
Oh, it is.
Oh, yeah.
He's the best.
Fun.
She lives in the closet when she's on with us because she has the little ones running all over the place, but we stick her in a closet. It's good times. So how are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Doing well.
We're doing good.
Doing good?
I didn't.
Super well.
I'm feeling extra spooky.
Didn't realize that drinking was an option, or I would have poured some drinks. I might do that here in a minute.
Oh,
Feel free.
yeah, feel free.
Drinking,
Grab yourself a drink.
Smoking, whatever you got, go for it.
Just don't get us kicked off of YouTube.
I
No,
will
no.
guarantee you that halfway through the show, I will be outside smoking a cigarette and a bowl, like during the show. So you're good.
Told you guys right
Bring up
before he
a
came on. I'm
hole.
like,
we can't do much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
sadly.
mean, usually I'm chain smoking more than Dell is usually, but like I'm in an actual office now and I have to smoke outside. My phone is dead, so it's like,
Oh.
I have been conditioned by Raz to whenever I see his face, I must chain smoke. He was kind enough last year. I was saying I was at that con in Connecticut, and I did the same con last year, but my flight, and some of our viewers have heard this story multiple times. My flight was supposed to go through Detroit into New York. My roommate was going to pick me up in New York and drive me to Connecticut, where the con was. And my flight in Detroit got stopped, and they had us wait for 10 hours before they finally said, okay, we aren't going to fly you out. Because they kept saying, oh, no, we're getting these pilots in. They're going to fly you. Oh, get on the plane and sit here for 2 hours. Oh, I guess these guys aren't coming. So go sit back out again. Here's $15. You can buy a cup of coffee at the gift shop,
literally a cup of coffee.
And yeah. And so they were like, that was all they were giving us. And they're like, we can fly you to Georgia. And then from Georgia, you can fly back up to New York tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm not going to have anybody waiting in New York tomorrow. They're already in Connecticut. So Raz, he and his lovely wife just called me up. They'd have been paying it. I've been talking to him when I was there. And they're just like, okay, here's the deal. We're in Dayton. So it's going to take a little bit to get there. But they drove from Dayton, Ohio to Detroit, Michigan, and then drove me all the way to Uncasville, Connecticut. So I could check into my hotel, and they dropped me off at the con, 10 minutes before it started, I think.
Yeah,
it was like a 13-hour drive. And it was like riding with Cheech and Chong, though. Like we're going through Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania I discovered is a rainforest climate is what it's considered. And there's all this fog, and we are making it twice as bad as we go through.
Yeah, we created fog that day. That night. Yeah.
So
that's an eventful trip. Yeah.
That was
every time I flew through Chicago, I could count on being stuck for at least 5 or 6 hours. Sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But at least I wasn't on the plane. I've only been trapped on the plane like that once. And that was enough.
Well, I sleep through everything. So I slept through that. They were like, wake me up. We got to get back off the plane. Are we there? No, we didn't leave. Oh, shit. Okay.
She did this in the car, too. She slept most of the way there. We kept waking her up accidentally by laughing at things that were happening on the road or just silly shit.
Yeah, I irritate Peggy with that. I can go to sleep. I can just flip a switch and go to sleep. And especially on planes, because I used to fly on military planes, and it's a good idea to be asleep when you're flying on those, because at least the kind of flying we were doing. So I developed that as a survival mechanism to be able to just go. I think I'll be unconscious for a while now.
I take 200 milligrams of Seroquel in the morning when I wake up, and then 600 at night. So my body is always just inches away from falling over. So I'm just yeah. Oh, we're going on a car trip? Thunk. I'm out for 15 hours. My mother has just driven. I am there now. Because I'm from Nebraska in the Midwest here. And so, road trip is life.
Oh yeah.
It's not a summer unless you put like 7,000 miles onto your vehicle, just going random places. So, all right. Channy, do you do a bunch of traveling?
I don't. I'm an insomniac and I actually being caught in the car and I've never had reason to be on an airplane before. So I've never been on a plane before.
You just got possessed by a demon.
I was about to say, there's the possession.
It's like, damn it, George, get out.
Your mic is possessed by a demon, I think is what it is.
Probably. But no, I'm an insomniac. And I don't like traveling because I don't like being stuck in cars, but that's mostly because of restless legs. And I've just never had a reason to be on an airplane before.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's figure out your mic real quick before we get the story going. And knock it off, Raz.
Can I sound like that?
Here we go.
You can hear your voice, but there's like the under voice coming out that's a little bit louder than your voice. Oh my God, Raz. Is the squirrel going to show up?
It's the squirrel
test. It's one of our D&D. Amazingly enough, in our D&D world, there's a Squirrel King who sells weed. And
It's his own franchise. Yep.
Yeah. Squirrel King. So, yeah, try talking again, Channing. Let's see if we can figure out the mic real quick.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll check some of my settings as well, see what I can figure out on my side.
Oh, I know what the problem is. You have a short in your cord. It's either a short in your connector or short in the actual mic cord itself. So I hear that.
Yeah, because
that
you just
crackle and
sounded
that buzz.
fine.
Yeah. You moved a certain way and then you sounded like perfectly clear.
Okay.
So don't move your
We'll
head.
just kind of
over.
point at you.
Don't move and I'm okay.
Yeah.
That sounded great. That was beautiful sounding.
You sound great now.
Right, get some glue over your stat. We're gonna glue her to the
project.
chair, like in the right position. I've got some stuff I can send over. So I can send some people over to glue you in place.
It's all right. I got the cat gravity. I'll be right here. No biggie.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, who would like to get started tonight? We got some stories to share. It's been a while. I missed this.
Now, I guess I can go first. My story is not a written story. I'm not going to be reading to y'all.
Well, that's fine.
I just have. It's kind of interesting because for the first third of my life, I ran into weird and uncanny events constantly. And then I met Peggy. And once we got together, they stopped. So our theory is that Peggy is some sort of a null or damper, and she cancels out my weird factor because, the
paranormal weird factor.
Yeah,
the rest of the weirdness is still there.
Yeah, that's not going anywhere anytime soon. So I could sit here and regale you for most of the night with weird, crazy stories that occurred for the most part either before I actually tried drugs or after I was employed in jobs that I couldn't use drugs. So you'll just have to trust me. I was sober when all these things took place. And when you hear what the environment was on some of them, I think you'll probably believe me. I guess the first one that I'll tell you, and if that doesn't take too long and I don't bore you too much, we can maybe do another one. But the first story I always call the little black ball. And I've had a plethora of jobs in the past. I'm only a couple of jobs short of being able to be the village people. So I found out that I didn't have any Native American in me, so that's never going to happen. I'll never be all of the village people. And while I worked in a motorcycle shop and in an arcade attached to a motorcycle shop, I was never a biker or a leather daddy for that matter. So I guess I will never be the village people, but I've done a lot of different things. And one of the things I did was at one point in my life, I was a correctional officer for the Wyoming Department of Correction, and I worked in the Wyoming Penitentiary in Rawlins, Wyoming. And when I worked there, the prison was still fairly new. They had just moved it from the territorial prison, which I'm glad I didn't get the opportunity to work in, because at that time, with the powerful weird magnet that I had going on, I may not have ever come out of there, because that place is supposed to be like severely haunted. It's really a terrible place. But I was working in this nice new penitentiary, only like I said, only 5 or 6 years old. I worked the night shift, and one of our jobs on the night shift was to walk the fence and check different buildings and make sure that they were secure. And one of the buildings that we had to check, not every night because it was only used when it needed to be used, but occasionally we had to check it, was the building in which they did executions. And when it finally came up our turn to go check this place, one of the guys I worked with said, "Hey, Carpenter, you need to come along. You need to see this place, and you need to know where it is, and where the locks are and everything. So come along with me, and we'll go check. We'll go check the death house, as they called it, which is also what I call my house, but for entirely different reasons." And so we went to this execution building, and I'd never been to it before, so I didn't even know what it looked like. It was kind of tucked away on the back of the penitentiary, and I was kind of underwhelmed when I first saw it, because what it looked like from the outside was a dentist's office. It was just a small building. They'd done some nice shrubs around the front of it. It was done with like household siding on it. Didn't look like a prison structure at all. Had a shingled pitched roof. It looked like a small dentist office or doctor's or eye doctor's office or something like that in a rural town. So that was surprising to me. And then kind of the more I thought about it, the more off-putting and disturbing it became, because I imagined what it would be like if you were being wheeled in a gurney into this place on your last day on Earth, and it gave you flashbacks of the dentist's office. So we went inside, and if it looked like a dentist's office on the outside, it definitely looked like one on the inside. It had commercial carpeting on the floor. The walls were all pristine white. There were paintings of barns and cows and all of this pastoral, calming imagery on the walls. There were couches along the wall, like a waiting room, and a little area for a receptionist to sit. And then I really expected somebody to tell me, it was time for me to go back and have my glasses fitted or something. There was one door that led out of the back of the waiting area. We went through that door, and it was locked. And that was the only thing that kind of threw off the dentist's office vibe of the building, was that was a steel door with a prison lock on it. So we went through that door, and on the other side of that door there was a hallway, and again looked just like the kind of hallway that you'd see in some kind of small office building. Same kind of paintings on the wall, nothing unusual about it. Brightly lit. We turned the lights on as we came in. Really nothing creepy about it. unless you knew what went on behind the doors. The first door that we passed on the right was the entrance to the room where the witnesses would sit and view the executions. We went past it, peeked our head in there, saw that nobody had made off with any of the furniture, closed the door, went down the hall towards, at the very end of the hall, there was another door that opened to the right. There was the actual execution chamber. And as we were walking towards that door, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a motion. And I looked to my left, and there, going along the baseboard, was a little black ball. Probably about the size of, about as big around as a quarter, the ball itself. But there were spikes that came out of this black ball all over the place, kind of like those balls that you squeeze to, to massage your hand, make your, help with your nerves. Only long and spiky, like a sea creature off the bottom of the floor would, or off the floor of the ocean would have. And this thing just kind of rolled right along the baseboard, and it got to the corner, and then it rolled and it disappeared around the corner where the door was. And I looked at the guy that was next, that was showing me this. And I said, "Did you see that?" He was like, "No." And I said, I just saw something go along there, and at first I thought it was a mouse, but that was not a mouse. And he said, "Was it a little black ball?" I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what it was, a little black ball." And he said, "Covered with spikes?" And I said, "Yeah, covered with spikes." And he said, "You'll get used to that. We see those all the time." And we did. I saw the black ball a couple of times while we were doing inspections there. And that is perhaps one of the creepiest things I've ever experienced. Although, strangely, it wasn't particularly frightening. It was just extremely odd. And Peggy and I have talked about whether or not that might have been a ghost. I think not. I think we both decided probably not a ghost, but the kind of emotions that people go through while being executed or witnessing someone that they love being executed, that probably leaves some bad after images. So that's the story of the little black ball.
Nice. That is pretty goddamn creepy.
I have more.
Oh, we will definitely take some more. Welcome back, Uncle Necro. Oh, God, I have the scroll backwards. That's okay. You seem to be coming in much better now.
Yeah, that's because I moved to a place where it's like right by the internet getting thingy. I forget what it's called. And it's like a way shorter landline than the 75-foot one I've been using to get to my area. So here's hoping.
Okay.
Everybody else seems to be coming in way better. Will come in handy tomorrow when we go to the Tomb of the Terrible. Anyway.
I'm excited for tomorrow, man. I love that fucking movie so much.
I'm scared. We're watching Cannibal the musical.
Yeah,
for tomorrow.
One of the greatest comedy horrors ever made.
It's cool.
It's not as fun as the Donner Party, but
I mean, it is.
It's a party.
You'll see.
We attended the Donner Party reunion tour.
Yeah.
By American Murder Song. So yeah, so we went. We actually have attended a Donner Party themed concert. So
eat your family,
Nice.
eat your friends.
All right, Shawn, would you like to throw us another? Well, we got you going.
I mean, sure. If you want. I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah, sure. You want a short one or a long one?
Let's do a long one.
Okay.
We like long stories.
All right.
the haunted house.
I'll tell you.
And you're making Raz's day, because most people end up reading, and Raz is the die hard telling the story, doing the thing about his experiences as well. And so he's like, "It's a campfire," and I'm like, "Yes," and I wrote something down. So
Cool. Well, then the next one is the haunted house. I did live in a haunted house I didn't know it when we moved in, or I probably wouldn't have moved in, but I don't know, I might have. And this was here in Enid, Oklahoma, which is nowhere in Oklahoma. It's like a little rural hub. The house itself, there was nothing frightening about the house. There was no, when I saw the house, I wasn't filled with dark foreboding. It was just a little house, as typical in a rural town in Oklahoma. It was a cute little house. And we moved in. My wife at that time and
The practice wife.
yes, yeah, and and my 3 daughters. We moved in, and at first, the first several months that we lived there, nothing weird happened. Other than my neighbors. My neighbors were extremely weird, but there wasn't anything supernatural about that. That was purely chemical in nature. So, but about that time, I bought a super great hot computer, and this will date when the story takes place, because it was like a top of the line computer, and it was an IBM 286. So if you know anything about computers, that was not a super hot computer. It was then, but now it's a paperweight. And one of the games that I played on that computer, because I only used it for 2 things: playing computer games, such as they were at the time, and writing. So the internet was still a gleam in the eye of I guess, William Gibson. I think he was writing about that time. But so one of the games that I played was this game called Red Baron, which was a World War I flight simulator. And I'd always been a big fan of the World War I aviation combat. It was fascinating to me. They flew these planes that were just held together by, literally held together by glue, wood that was with fabric that was sewn and glued onto it, and then the fabric was stiffened by rubbing dope all over it. So they called their planes kites. They really were kites. They were just motorized kites. So I got this game, and I'm a little obsessive when I get something new like that, and I just played the hell out of it. I played it for, once my kids were in bed, and my wife was working nights, so she wasn't around to bug me. I would hook up and I would go and fly mission after mission after mission, different planes, different time periods during the First World War, and just played the hell out of it. Had a ball. And again, a few weeks like that went by, nothing odd. But then one morning I woke up, and my computer desk was set in our dining room, in one corner of our dining room. And I woke up one morning, and I was headed to the kitchen. I had to go through the dining room to get to the kitchen to make breakfast. I was headed to the kitchen, and I heard this unmistakable brrr, and it was the lame sound effects of an airplane crashing. And I looked over at my computer, and sure enough, there on the screen was my game with a crashed airplane, but nobody was there. Nobody was there playing the game. And to make matters weirder, in those days, you couldn't just turn on your computer and click the icon to play the game. You had to go into DOS, and you had to go to the right file, and you had to type the right DOS commands to get the thing to even start. So it was a multi-step process that none of my kids were old enough to do. I mean, it was my oldest at that time, I think, was 7. No, not even that. She was 5. So there was no way any of the kids were old enough to have done it, and there was nobody else there. So that freaked me out a little bit. Tried to come up with an explanation for it. I couldn't come up with one, so I did what you normally do when you run into a situation like that. I forgot about it, and went about my business and made breakfast for me and the kids. And that started happening pretty much every morning. If I stayed up late and played, the next morning, every time that I walked into the living or into the dining room, I would get there just as this plane crashes into the ground on my game. And then I started getting a little creeped out.
Don't forget the pets.
Oh, yes.
Scoop, how scared they got.
Yeah. And I also had a house full of pets at that time. And not normal pets either, because again, weird stuff, weird person, weird life, weird stuff. So I had a schnauzer, miniature schnauzer. That's pretty normal. I had a miniature dachshund. That's kind of starting to push the limits because dachshunds are odious enough at full size. At miniature size, they're terrible. And then, of course, I had a miniature pot-bellied pig. And by miniature, I mean it was smaller than a horse. This thing was huge. It was gigantic. I had no idea how big miniature pot-bellied pigs got, but they can get as big as a Saint Bernard. This one wasn't quite that big yet. I found somebody else for it to live with before it got that big. But so I had all these pets, and the pig did live in the house, and it was actually a nice, clean pet. It was just huge. And initially, they would sleep all in their different parts of the house, in parts of the living room. Each of them had scoped out a little area that was where they slept in the living room at night. And as this plane crashing in the morning proceeded, they got to where they were all sleeping in a pile by the couch. And when I'd get up in the morning and start in there, they clearly did not like whatever was going on in the dining room. They did not appreciate it, and they were obviously really nervous about it. So the kids, however, just were like, no, they didn't notice anything. They were fine. So then things kind of escalated. After about a month or two of that going on, I woke up, my wife and I woke up one morning, and she looked over at me and she said, "Oh my gosh, what's all over you?" And I said, I don't know. I immediately reached up and rubbed my face. And when I rubbed my face and pulled it away, there were little reddish brown smears on my hands. So I went in and looked at the mirror, and I had little reddish brown dots all over my face of this, kind of half-dried viscous substance. And it was all over our sheets. And we could not figure out what that came from. There wasn't a leak in the ceiling. There was nothing like that going on. And what it looked like was blood splatter. I mean, it looked like, and unfortunately, by that time in my life, I'd actually seen this. It looked like aerosolized blood spatter, like you'd see from a close contact gunshot wound. So that bugged me. And that started happening pretty much every night. So I got to where, big, tough guy that I was, I would go out and sleep with the pig and the two dogs on the couch. I wanted no part of that freaking bedroom. I didn't want to wake up covered in blood splatter every morning. And so every morning I'd get up, and me and the two dogs and the pig would commiserate with each other a little bit. And I'd go through the dining room to the kitchen and hear the plane crash. And it just kept kind of building and building. Oops, I'm shaking the whole table. I got to where that's how bad it was. That's how bad it was. Everything started shaking.
In the basement.
Yes. And then we started having problems with bugs, which is not uncommon in Oklahoma, but we had real problems with bugs that we shouldn't have been having. We were not dirty people. We got a roach infestation that was horrifying. It's the worst one I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like it, other than in horror movies. I noticed my refrigerator wasn't running real well, so I pushed it away from the wall to kind of look at the condensers and back, to see if they were all coated in dust like they'll get sometimes. And there was literally a mass of cockroaches underneath the refrigerator the size of the footprint of the refrigerator. It just took off in all directions. And again, big tough guy that I am, I had a little runaway fit and ran in circles and was really grossed out. So we called in an exterminator. The exterminator came and looked and was like, this is terrible, but I don't know where they're coming from. Did you buy the refrigerator used? Maybe it had a roach nest in it when you bought it? I said, no, we moved it from another house. He said, so well, let's go down and look in the basement. We went and looked in the basement, and one of the things you'll find in Oklahoma, I don't know about Nebraska, but in Oklahoma, some of the older houses, they still have dirt floor basements. And this particular house had a dirt floor basement. And he was like, well, here's where they're coming from. They're coming from this, they're coming right through the dirt, and this is where they're nesting. And although he never found any, real nest or anything, but that was where they came from. We did eventually determine that was definitely where they were coming from. They were coming from the basement. So my wife's not loving it, because when she's home and not, and is sleeping at night with me instead of during the day because she works nights, we're both waking up covered with this sticky brownish red stuff. She witnesses the airplane crashing in my video game herself. I don't think she believed that at first, so she saw it. Seems like that'd be easy to believe after waking up with blood spatters all over your face, but that she had a problem with that one. She saw how scared the animals were, and of course the bugs were enough to make. That was the final straw. We were like, we got to get out of here because we cannot live with bugs like this, and the place is getting really freaky. So we, being young people at the time, had stupidly entered into a rent-to-own situation. So I went and did a little bit of legal research and got all my ducks together to go down to this place and get, argue with them about getting out from under this thing. And I walk in there and I'm prepared for a fight. And I walked up to the lady that had done the deal with us in her real estate office. And I said, I want out of that purchase-own agreement. And, I will go to court if that's what I have to do. And she said, oh, no, that's okay. We'll let you out. And I said, well, are you going to hit me with fines? Because the contract had fines and stuff. She said, no, we'll waive all the fines. We'll just let you out of it. I said, why? And she said, well, nobody likes that house. She goes, I'm surprised you lasted as long as you did. Most people, only live in there for a month or two. She said, so we really just think of it as a rental. And I described to her some of the stuff that had happened. And she was like, yeah, I've heard all that before, except for the computer game. That's never happened before. That's a new twist. And I said, well, do you have any idea what the hell is going on at that house? And, why did you give it to me in the first place? And the answer to the second question was obviously greed. The answer to the first question was the last owner of the house before they came into possession of it was a very old man. And he didn't have any family left. So they basically picked the house up because it was intestate. I think that's the word. Because he died without family. And his wife had the kind of the tragic circumstances were that his wife had died, and apparently possibly the circumstances were a little mysterious, but it was kind of hard to tell. Because he basically took her downstairs and put her in the basement, her body in the basement. And then he lived there for quite a while with the body in the basement. And then one day he didn't answer the door. The mailman knocked on the door because they had a package for him. He didn't answer. There was some mail kind of piling up on the porch. So they contacted the police, who came and did a welfare check on him. They found him in the bedroom where he had apparently filled his mouth with water, put a pistol in his mouth, and pulled the trigger and killed himself. So I was like, well, that could explain it. You know, that's definitely not a happy story. And then the woman said, oh, yeah. And you know what? He was a fighter pilot in World War II, or in World War I. And for a while, I actually had pictures of him that I got from, I went and Xerox from the library because there was a story about him. But yeah, he was actually a World War I fighter pilot. So I'm getting there. She's telling me, don't forget the garage. I'm like, I'm here
to remind him of things. That's what he asked me to do.
So we were out from under the thing. We found a house. We moved the fuck out. Got everything packed up, ready to go. And we had moved from a larger house into this one. So we had a lot of stuff stored in the garage. And I went back and I got 2 or 3 loads of boxes from that and put it in the van. And every time I went to the garage, it was harder. It was like I was literally walking into something almost tangible. It was dread. It was hard to do it. And finally, after like 2 or 3 trips, I turned around to my wife and I said, is there anything in that garage we absolutely cannot live without? And she said, no. And I said, then fuck it, we're leaving it there, because I'm not going back into that garage again. And we got in our car and our moving van and we moved away. And I've taken Peggy by the place, driven by it, and said, there it is. That's the haunted house. And there's always cars there. So I don't know whether it's still haunted or not, but it certainly was when I was there. So that's my haunted house story.
Awesome. I muted everybody, so I'm having to unmute people.
No worries.
Dude, the game, that is really cool. I love that. You figure, ghosts are smart enough to move things. Sure. So why not eventually manipulate a keyboard? And if they watch you do it enough that they can figure it out.
Sure. And if he was a pilot in World War I, he was not a stupid man.
Yeah.
I mean, that required some engineering and some intelligence to do at that point in time. So yeah, that's what I figured too, was he said it and looked over my shoulder enough times that he could just do it himself. So,
and Stefan would like to let you know that the most important thing in Oklahoma is I-40 east and west and I-35 north and south. They make it easy to escape.
Yes.
And, thumbs up.
Hopefully someday we'll soon be screaming down either one of those roads. Yes, absolutely.
Come on up to Nebraska.
Just for your information, here in Nebraska, we do still have some dirt basements, and also a couple of months ago, we finally got the indoor plumbing we keep hearing about. It's
nice.
Yeah, we're lucky. We barely have indoor plumbing, but we've got it. So we're on the cutting edge here too.
See, Del and I both had to go to high school together, riding horses and dodging Native American attacks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I got dysentery once. It was crazy.
Yeah. Be careful crossing the rivers too.
Were you on your way to Oregon? So
we joke, but like literally the rest of the folks are from other places, but James and I are in Nebraska, like not too far from each other. And we did go to the same high school, and it was there were cows on one side and corn on the other, and like the highway went by it. But I lived on an acreage, so I drove up a dirt road, or gravel. We actually had gravel by then, gravel road to go to school every morning. Had to drive like 15 minutes to get to town.
Yeah.
But
right.
My papa he lived up on a hill in a very small town. He's like, time to go to town. We got to go tootling. And that's what things are like in Nebraska. I live in Lincoln now, and it's like the biggest small town in the world.
Yeah. Lincoln's a pretty town too. I've done some.
Yeah.
I've been to Lincoln a couple of times. Here we live in a decent sized little town. Peggy and I do. We live in Enid, Oklahoma, which is interesting because it's a little tiny rural town that was basically just a little stop on the railroad tracks that cattle were loaded onto. But it was named after a character from an Alfred Lord Tennyson poem. So that's kind of neat. That's kind of a neat juxtaposition. Yeah, so we're not like quite that rural, but yeah, there's a town that we drive through on the way to the city, which is what everyone calls Oklahoma City, is just the city, called Bison, and it's literally just a high school and a grain elevator. So
it has Bison on it, so you know you're driving through Bison. So that's good.
We had challenges to climb the grain elevator when we were kids. But you always got caught, so I never did it because I'm like, I'm scared of heights and I am clumsy. I break a toe monthly. So I'm like, me climbing a grain? No, that's not going to happen. That's just ridiculous. But yeah, that happens.
Yep. Just the Midwest. Yep.
So who would like to go next?
I can go.
All right. Let's pull up Shani. I gotta find. There we go.
So, dealer's choice, would you like a real story or would you like a written story first? Suppose we'll go with a real one. When I was younger, I lived in West Coast in Oregon, around the Eugene area, on a fairly abandoned butte that was pretty much just patchworks of logging. There were some places that hadn't been logged by us for probably some 40 years. They were just like these moss, lush forested areas. And we lived on 13 and a half acres. And we didn't have running water or electricity at the time. We did battery lights. We did spring water. And the spring, we'd just have empty milk jugs. And the spring was down the hill. It was about like a 15-minute walk up and down. But it was really refreshing spring water. It was just this hole coming out in the ground that would fill up with a pool with water. And there would be the water trickling out of the rock right there. So just beautiful, refreshing spring. Now, next to the spring, there was these woods that had been clear cut more recently and replanted, and you could tell because the trees were just rows and planted way too close together, so all their branches were just dead underneath. There were only a few that you could tell were really going to pull through because they planted them just so close together. And that place always creeped us out. It was a matter of we didn't like to go down there to go fill up the jugs. We would usually go in pairs. Every now and then I'd have a brave day and I would just go and fill up some water jugs, help my mom out, and hike them back up the hill. But it wasn't until years later when we were adults and all of us were sitting around the table talking about, living on the 13 and a half acres in Oregon, that I asked my siblings, 3 of them, I said, did you guys ever get the impression that there was a wolfman living in those trees next to the spring? They all stopped and they looked at me and they're like, you saw the wolfman? And I was like, no, I just always had an impression that if I looked there at the wrong moment, I would see someone with a wolf head. And they all remained really quiet. And they looked at me and they're like, I never told you about the Wolfman. And the boys looked at my sister and they're like, we never told you about the Wolfman either. The only one who apparently had really seen anything, though, was my older sister. The rest of us, it was just the boys had gotten glimpses and I just got an impression. So, yeah, we just we'd never talked about it as kids. It wasn't until we were adults that we realized we all had the same impression, sight glimpses of the same exact type of creature living where these trees had been clear cut and planted too close together. The other thing that we do as kids, some people have told you about the man in the hat who dances on the wall. If you've ever heard about the shadow man with the top hat, that was something that we also just took the granted that everybody knew about because we had one of those. In the closet in the our 2 bedrooms had 2 closets stack to stack as a double wide trailer. And if moonlight was coming in through the window, you could see this top hat shadow creep along the wall outside of the closet. And it would move around a little bit and then it would just go away after a certain amount of time. And this was only in the boys' room though. It wasn't in the girls' room. So in the closet right next to the other side, no hat man. The top hat man never appeared there, but he did always appear in the boys' room. Just certain nights when the moon was clear enough, you could see him. So I'll leave you with that one.
I'm going to pull you off before I put you back on for another story because we wanted to get James in here real quick while he's hooked up. And that way we'll also have a break between stories for you so that when it helps with editing a little bit better. Yeah. James, were you going to go on camera or did you want to stay how you were right now?
I'm going to say how I am right now because you saw me earlier. And also there is no light in the room. So
okay.
So,
all right.
First of all, I want to clarify. I want to clarify that I have 2 that I want to read. I don't know if you want me to do it one at a time. So,
do one. Let us do a pull you off break. We'll play ads and then we'll put you on for the next one.
Okay, I will go with the poem that I was going to read first. This I wrote 25 years ago, and then it got lost in various shuffles around. Time happens. And I just came across it again while going over the estate with my sister, kind of sorting things in the house. And so this one's titled Necrophiliac. Why can't you die? Your rotting corpse comes back no matter how hard I try. Your life has been denied, yet you still crawl into my bedchamber to suck me dry. My life force is waning. Will to live is draining. Fight to resist the putrid stench, yet return to kiss disease's lips, making love to the undead corpse, disgusted yet addicted to the horrid touch. Freedom once again thrown to the side for the impassioned embrace. I hate you. I despise you. I love you. You're cold to the touch. You are dead in my life. My lust animates you, crawling back to the vomit, lapping it up with disgusted fever. Lying here naked, pushed away again. Welcome back into my head. Do not mourn for me, for I am already dead. And scene.
Bravo.
Nice.
I like that.
Good. That was
Yeah.
good. I like it.
Yeah, I think I was going through some stuff then. I don't know. 25.
25, that makes us... Okay, we aren't going to say how much that makes us, but yes, that is the time of your life that you go through things at. So, all right, guys, we're going to pay some bills here real quick, and we will be back.
Greetings and shabebans. We are the Retro Reductopus Cephala Podcast, a long-form bi-weekly show that celebrates all the things that made growing up awesome.
Yeah, that sounds good, but I don't know what all those words mean.
I think what Parasite seems trying to say is that on Retro Red Octopus, we explore a range of retro goodness, from toys, video games, and movies, to cartoons, and even snacks and school lunches.
Oh.
And we do it all with a positive spin, a slew of killer guests, and some very adult language.
And you know what else is cool?
No.
This crazy show is part of the Door King Podcast Network with new episodes every Tentacle Tuesday.
What's that?
And if waiting 2 weeks for a new episode gives you a sad, know that we drop bonus episodes all the time, like the off-format Crow's Nest and an interview series we call The Brig.
You can listen to Retro Red Octopus on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any app that's cool enough to carry the only show that celebrates all the things that make growing up awesome.
This just came to my mind that I have to share with you guys, because if you haven't watched the episode yet, I think you two next to me watched it. But in our last Splash Pages thing that we were going through, Drew somehow became unmuted during the intro and was like commenting the entire time through our little video going on. And he's like, "Oh, look, we have hosts, we have guests, we have a squirrel, we have this," and he's just like singing along in the background. Had no idea that he wasn't muted, and we are just like making fun of him afterwards, and he felt bad. I love you, Drew, but you're so funny. You're so funny all the time. All right, so I have one more question before we go back to Uncle Necro, or James, wrong show. Shawn, I need to understand, or anybody else who understands why did he fill his mouth with water before shooting himself in the head? That was something that I was confused by. Is that a common thing?
It's fairly common for people who are like really serious about getting the job done. I don't know for a fact how efficacious it is. I don't think they'll ever probably do a Mythbuster about it. But supposedly, if your mouth is full of water, when you put the muzzle of the pistol in your mouth, the expanding gas causes the water to also steam and expand, and it's supposedly will basically turn your head into a bomb. So that's the idea. It's So.
Yikes.
Huh.
Yeah, it must have had some effect because they knew that the police in Enid, Oklahoma, knew from looking at his body that that's what he'd done. So I'm guessing it's at least somewhat effective.
So remember, if you ever want to make your mark,
Exactly.
All right.
Seems like if Waterworks Jello would be even better.
I thought maybe like you drown or something afterwards in case you missed, but
we
no.
Here at the network do not
Grislier than that.
endorse violent deaths such as this in real life. So
I missed part of that. I'm sorry. I was blathering on top of you. What?
Oh,
no, it's fine.
He was just stating that we do not support suicide. So okay, I'm just gonna let that up once.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It was this thing we call a joke that I was kind of
Yeah,
going for. And sometimes
I just realized that me putting up the banner as an extra haha is not funny either. So, haha, suicide hotline. Oh wait, no, that's not funny at all. Okay. Cover up. Hey, James, are you ready to tell your second story?
yes, I am.
All
We're all
right,
ready.
here we go.
Okay, this one is called the Philco device. I wrote this entirely at my most favorite pub in the world, Sean O'Casey's in Omaha. And I am going to read it to you now. So, what was that now? The bartender told you that I had a doozy of a story that you might be interested in. This must be your first time in Omaha. It is? Well, where are you from? Massachusetts. Why in the world would you want to come to Nebraska? Actually, forget it. You came to me for the story, not to strike up a conversation about why you're here. At least you had the sense to come to the good part of Nebraska, where there is some semblance of modern civilization, though I like to say that Omaha is more of a small town with a severe thyroid problem rather than a proper metropolitan city. Where are my manners? Jimbo's the name, and yeah, it's not a nickname for anything. It's my actual name. Don't ask me why, mostly because I don't know. But Ben, the bartender here at this fine Midwestern pub tonight, is correct. I do have a doozy of a story for you. It's one that everyone here has already heard several times over, but once in a while, someone like yourself, someone who's never set foot in this establishment before in their lives, comes along, and I get to tell it fresh and new to a set of virgin ears. So set me up with a pint of the Dunkel, and I will tell you. Ah, yes, mother's milk. Thank you kindly. Now, the story I'm about to tell you is true. Swear to whatever deity you ascribe to. I say that because, as you're going to find out in a bit, it will sound quite a bit far-fetched, like I'm just lifting it from an episode of one of those old science fiction-y television shows. And honestly, there are times where I question my own recollection of the events that happened right before my own eyes. But despite what all of the newspapers and those psychiatrists told me, it was all real. It all happened in the spring of my senior year in high school back in 1992. I was attending one of those rural community-based schools about an hour away from here, where they bust in kids from 3 small towns and a bunch of farms around the country. The school itself was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by cornfields and cows, right off of the 1-lane highway. They've since then expanded that part of the highway to 2 lanes, but that's not important to the story, really. I have to be careful not to wander down rabbit trails while I'm telling you this. I have a tendency to do that, you know. Or, I guess you don't know. Well, now you do. I don't know how old you are, but it was a different time then. Computers weren't as ubiquitous as they are today. Cell phones didn't exist, but they were a huge brick-like device. Devices that would give you cancer, nothing like those smartphones that everybody has nowadays. Not that I'm complaining. Say what you will, but you won't be hearing me gripe about how things were much better back in the old days. Are you kidding me? I used to have to lug around a backpack wherever I went, filled with tapes, my Walkman, and a bunch of AA batteries, as well as whatever books I was reading at the time. Now I can keep all of that in one handy-dandy device I can whip out wherever I go. We're living in a golden age, I tell you. Sorry about that. That was what I was talking about, rabbit trails. My brain ricochets like that. Anyway, computers weren't as great and powerful as they are now. My high school did have a computer lab by the time I was a senior. However, they were all mostly used for typing out and printing lessons and term papers and homework assignments. From what I understand, my alma mater didn't even have a proper internet setup until about the mid-90s, long after I was out of there. Hell, the AV Club was still using those big, clumsy, top-loading VCRs that were considered ancient by the time I was a freshman. And no, I didn't just wander down another rabbit trail. I'm telling you this to give you a contextual backdrop. We weren't as technologically advanced back then as we are now, which makes that what actually happened kind of even more bizarre. Give me a second. That's the good stuff there. Continuing on. So then, spring 1992. Senior year. It was a Friday, and I was one of the student judges for the annual science fair that the school was host to. You know the type. Kids from the surrounding grade schools and middle schools in the district gather together in the gym of the high school, showing off whatever science project they've been working on for the weeks, if not months, leading up to this. It's the one time of the year where us nerdy types got to flex our brains and really shine. What? Oh, don't look at me like that. Don't let this gross, manly exterior fool you. I've always been about science from quite a young age. My parents got me a subscription to a science journal for my 7th birthday. Sure, it was one that had the most colored pictures in it, but I had a fascination with both space travel and the cosmos, as well as an interest in what dwelt underneath the oceans and bodies of water. I still do, it's just more of a hobby nowadays. The thing is, my interest in science waned a bit while in high school. I don't know why. It may have had something to do with being required to study the subject in an academic sense, and my arrogant teenage self not wanting to do whatever authority figure told me I had to do. In grade school and middle school, I couldn't wait until the springtime came around so I could pick out whatever it was I was obsessing over that year and enter it into the science fair. I would get a real buzz out of doing all the research, going with my parents into town and spend hours at the library, setting up a makeshift lab cobbled together with whatever we had on hand in the basement of the farmhouse I grew up in, making notes, building the backboards for the presentation, making voodoo dolls of my competition to take them out of the running. Okay, yeah, that last thing I threw in there just to make sure you were still paying attention. You were starting to get that glazed over look. The point is, I was really into the whole science fair thing, and by the time I was in high school, I was only a member of the science club, so I could specifically get out of classes for the meetings, not because I had any desire to help foster the love of science in a bunch of kids I didn't know. Yeah, I was a selfish asshole, but what teenager isn't? So anyway, it was the day of the science fair, and I was part of a group of 3 other fellow senior students who were picked to judge the row containing the 5th grade entries from around the district. It was myself, a kid named Andy who had something weird happen to him during a school-sponsored camping trip back in 8th grade, and now he can't go near any river or body of water without having a massive anxiety attack. And this girl named Jenny, who was one of those classic overachiever types who was doing this to impress whatever high-end college she was aiming for. I don't know if all the mothers got together and agreed that if they had girls, they would all have names that ended with the letter I or what happened, but again, that's beside the point. Hey, look at that. I can see at the bottom of the pint glass. Let's get some more of that dark stuff in here and we can continue. That's the stuff. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. It was the early afternoon, and the fair itself had been going on for about 45 minutes or so. We were working our way down the row of displays, stopping by each one and listening to the carefully practiced presentation by the 10, 11-year-olds that may or may not have had some assistance from their parents or older siblings. I mean, one of them had one of those Jacob's Ladder spark gap devices that you see in those mad scientist labs in the old movies. There's no way some kid from one of the rural schools had access to one of those without a family member being on staff at some college science department. Well, sure, maybe if you were bright enough, you could maybe Frankenstein together something using things laying around the farm, but this thing did not look like it was cobbled together like that. Anyway, we were maybe 4 or 5 projects in, and we had just finished up a presentation by some kid whose idea of a science project was to dump a packet of sea monkeys into a small fish bowl and see what happens. A bunch of dead brine shrimp is what happened, in case you were wondering. I was just amazed that sea monkeys were still a thing, really, but we came up to this next presenter in line, and by that time, my mind was pretty much numbed from the previous presentations, and I found myself much more interested in figuring out how to continue feigning interest in the remaining 6 presentations that awaited us after this one. Fortunately, this particular one turned out to be our last one of the afternoon, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. The Dunkel. Anyway, it was a girl, sandy blonde hair, worn in a ponytail tied with a black velvet ribbon, and wearing a black dress that reminded me of Wednesday Addams from the Addams Family television show. I remember it vividly because of that. Black patent leather shoes, hands folded in front of herself, looking quite polite and confident for someone in her age bracket. It was kind of unnerving, actually, thinking back on it. The setup on the table she was standing in front of and to the side of to give us a good look wasn't all that elaborate. The presentation board she used was your standard generic white double-ply setup with the words "From Beyond Reality" stenciled in solid black on top with "Are there planes of existence outside the scope of accepted reality" also stenciled in black marker underneath. Adorning the sides of this was a framed sepia-toned picture on one side of what looked like an emaciated, older-looking man dressed in an old-timey looking scientist coat and sporting a pair of eyes that were sunken with bags underneath them. And I don't know if this was a trick of the photography at the time or what, but I swear those eyes kind of glowed despite it being monochrome. On the other side of the display was another picture frame, this one containing what looked like an aged and yellowed newspaper clipping with the legend "Death of Scientists Ruled Accidental," with servants' bodies never found underneath it in smaller letters, and the rest of the story in smaller print I didn't bother trying to read. They seemed an odd choice to use in the setup, but at least it wasn't garish and painful to look at. Setting on the table, front and center of the display, was what looked like a heavily modified old-timey Philco radio, the kind that was around in the early 20th century and was big enough to put on your mantelpiece above the fireplace. Big, deeply stained wood with a bunch of knobs and dials and fresh netting and stuff. Only, like I said, it was heavily modified. And by that, I mean there were extra knobs and switches that were clearly the kind you could pick up at the local Radio Shack. What do you mean, what's a Radio Shack? That's a wrench you don't want to get me started on. Go look it up sometime. Point is, it's the kind of place where any crafty nerd could go to if they wanted to, say, heavily modify an old-timey Philco radio to do something that it's not usually commonly used for, which is what this kid seemed to have done. Besides all of those extra knobs and switches, there was what looked like a large makeshift satellite dish screwed into the top of the radio, made out of pieces of an erector set. Tell me you've heard of those. Yes? Okay, good. A large metal pie plate and a bent cone hanger sticking out of the middle of it, along with a thick coil of wires snaking down from the antenna to the back of the radio. Rather colorful, like a rainbow, really. The part of this thing that really caught my eye was a large car battery setup next to the thing, hooked up to the modified Philco with clamps, and that in turn wired into what looked like one of those large throw switches that you see mad scientists use all the time in those movies. You know, come to think of it, that alone should have tipped off some major red flags there. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself again. As with the other displays, it was Jenny that took the lead in getting the presentation rolling. Being all bubbly, outgoing, and effervescent, it made sense, really. Both Andy and I had no problem hanging back and letting her do most of the work. We all had clipboards with the info sheets of all the projects assigned to us, where we were supposed to be taking notes for determining which ribbon they'll be going home with, but I was more or less doodling in mine the whole time, trying to fake interest and look like I was actually engaged in jotting down important information. I'm pretty sure Andy was doing the same thing. Jenny, however, was all business, and if you'll excuse the expression, she had this down to a science. "Hi," she said, all smiles and an upward inflection on the way she talked. "I'm Jenny. This is Andy and Jimbo, and I can't wait to hear about your science experiment." You could really hear that exclamation point at the end of her sentence. She took a quick glance at her clipboard. "Alexis Tillinghast? Am I pronouncing that correctly, sweetie?" You can tell by the look on the kid's face that she didn't appreciate being called sweetie like that. She also gave Jenny a sweeping look and just nodded back at her in a way that indicated that she was tolerating Jenny's disposition for the sake of the presentation itself. I couldn't help but like the kid. I happened to glance over at Andy to see if he caught this, but he looked like he was trying to recall something that was just on the tip of his tongue. Tillinghast, he muttered to himself. Well, okay then, Jenny continued. Why don't you tell us about your experiment? I remember the thin smile that spread on the girl's face. It kind of unnerved me for a second. Well, she began, my experiment is based on the work of my great-great-uncle, Dr. Crawford Tillinghast. Have you ever heard of him? Jenny shook her head no. Andy, on the other hand, jumped up a bit. Wait, the Dr. Tillinghast. Alexis smiled at him and nodded. Andy then turned to me and looked like someone who just spotted a celebrity walking into the gymnasium at the time. Dude, they made that movie about him a few years ago. I had no idea what he was talking about. Alexis made a loud pfft noise. Please, she said. That movie took so many liberties on what actually happened, it's laughable at best. Of course, they had to say it's supposedly based on the really old story by that dead pasty guy. But yes, my great-great-uncle is the one that he based his story on in the first place. I've read it. It's amusing. Jenny threw Andy a dirty glance for interrupting the proceedings. Okay then, she said. What's this all about? Well, Alexis said, going into full-on presentation mode, Dr. Tillinghast postulated all the way back in the 1920s that there was more than just our reality that existed, that there was what he referred to as a higher plane of existence that was unperceivable to our human eyes due to our physical limitations. This kid uses some big words, I remember thinking to myself at the time. Usually about this time, my brain kind of went somewhere else and I would just smile and nod along and not really pay much attention. Otherwise, I would have slipped into a boredom coma. But something about this kid made me want to see where this was going. Mostly, I kind of wanted to see what the gizmo she had on the table was going to do. The legend goes, she continued, that he spent years and years working on a device that would allow us a glimpse into this reality he swore existed just beyond our senses. Somehow, he managed to convince the science department at the university he worked at to fund his project. He worked tirelessly day and night, foregoing sleep, food, personal hygiene, and relationships. Finally, after his colleagues were complaining that he was neglecting his duties as a professor at the university for what was being referred to by the staff as Crawford's folly, the funding was pulled and his research was canceled after a bit of a mishap, which resulted in the entire campus losing power for a week. Wow, Andy muttered. I had to admit, this story had my full attention. It was certainly better than the Moo Glue presentation half an hour earlier. Jenny shushed him. Go on, dear. Yes, well, Alexis said, looking annoyed at being patronized. He ended up moving his experiments to his residence, continuing his experiments somehow, siphoning money from the science department and sneaking whatever he needed off campus and doing some creative rewiring and jury-rigging complex electrical grids inside of his very house to get the proper amount of power to continue his obsession. Don't you mean jerry-rigging? Jenny asked. Same thing, Alexis said back, the sarcasm barely contained. I really like this kid. Anyway, the story goes that he was not only able to find a way to peer into this different plane of existence, but also go so far as to travel there for very brief intervals. Unfortunately, he was only able to do it a small handful of times before going completely mad, and not without some controversy. She glanced at the framed news clipping for emphasis. So, as you can imagine, this is something my family has been trying to downplay since then, having a mad scientist in our family that may or may not have managed to defy physics and lost some servants in the process. Oh, and tried to kill one of his friends from the university who helped stop his research in the first place. I only know of all this because I happened to stumble upon his old journal that was hidden in the root cellar of the farm here in Nebraska that my family immigrated to after World War II. Said Jenny. That's all very interesting, sweetie. However, what does that have to do with your science fair experiment? You should have seen the combination sigh and eye roll on this kid when Jenny said that. It was great. I couldn't help but chuckle a bit at that, which, of course, earned me one of Jen's panted annoyed glances, like when I called her Jen instead of Jenny, But again, that's besides the point. How about another round? Yeah, I'll buy this round. There, that's better. Now, at this point, you could tell by her body language that Jenny was starting to lose a bit of her bubbly composure with this kid, which is part of why I was taking such an interest in this particular experiment. Also, it's not everyone that can boast having an old school mad scientist in their family line. Also, I really wanted to see what was going to happen when she flipped that switch, given what she was pulling from. I was just getting to that, the kid said. She straightened up, her face lighted up with a smile that all three of us stepped back a bit. I have not only replicated his work, but have managed to do so utilizing various items that I found laying around the house, Radio Shack, and a Sears catalog. She lifted her arms to the apparatus on the table behind her. Behold, the device that will tear a hole in the veil between worlds. I have to admit, even if that thing did absolutely nothing, she really knew how to sell the presentation. Then the girl reached behind her into a bag, produced a pair of goggles and a large, heavy-looking black leather gloves, the kind that really completed the mad scientist look, and put them on. Grasping the handle of the switch, she looked back at us and said, with a grin that would be burned into my drains for years afterwards, and before we could say anything, she threw the switch, and with a rather dramatic flourish, and nothing. It was kind of disappointing, really. Jenny snickered a little. Was that it? She then asked. Despite having darkened goggles on, you could feel the daggers Alexis was staring into her. It's a Philco, she said. Let it warm up. Sure enough, there began a humming sound that was low enough to be perceived, but it also inspired a slight twinge in my gut that didn't feel right. But I didn't really have time to focus on that because, for reasons I still can't figure out, it looked like the air around that Frankenstein Philco was warping a bit, shimmering, if you will. I leaned over to Andy and whispered, "Are you seeing this?" He just nodded in response, eyes fixed on the device. Jenny seemed to be a bit less impressed, though. "That's a neat trick, however," she began saying before being cut off by the girl's full-on creepy grin. "I assure you, this is no mere trick." The way she sped out that last word made me back up an inch or two. Then she turned a couple of the knobs up fully, with the sound it emitted intensifying to a sickening throb that you can feel deep within yourself. And along with that, the shimmering that surrounded the Philco device grew. And that's when I first saw them. Two of these things at first. They had these bodies of spiders, only with way more legs than you would normally see on those things, with far too many eyes, some on stalks, and large mouths that bore at least 2 rows of sharp, nasty-looking teeth. Spiders freaked me out to begin with, but these things looked like they were everything that I hated about those creepy things and amplified the nightmare factor by, well, a lot. I also thought this might have been an hallucination until I happened to glance back at Andy and saw that look of frozen terror on his face. "Are you seeing this too?" I asked him. "What, the nightmare spiders?" "Yep, those would be it." I don't know if it was a comfort knowing that I wasn't the only one seeing these things, but at least my brain wasn't messing with me again. Jenny began backing up a little bit herself. Clearly, she could see these things as well. Those things were just crawling around the Philco and along the table, then stopped and looked directly at us. They trained all of those eyes in our directions. They could see us. That's when those buggers reared up on their back legs, opened up the mouths of theirs, bearing all of those teeth, and jumped right at us. All 3 of us took a full step backwards, flinched, and yelped. However, there was nothing. Those things passed right through us like they were intangible holograms, and when we looked, they vanished like they were out of range of the signal. Jenny made with some spicy adjectives that would have gotten her perfect high school record besmirched had it not been for what happened directly after. That girl, Alexis, started laughing at one of those dramatic maniacal laughs that was made creepier due to the fact that she was only a kid. "That was nothing," she said. She then reached behind the device, ignoring the 3 other spider mutants that appeared around the Philco, and pulled out an even bigger throw switch. This was attached to a rather thick-looking utility cable that I hadn't paid much attention to until then. I mean, this was a science fair. There were cables snaking everywhere. Only this was a good inch and a half in diameter and snaked from the switch all the way out one of the side doors of the gymnasium. It's by its own power, she continued, there's only a few feet surrounding the device that we can peer into. A different kind of terror bug, some kind of giant centipede covered with eyeballs and mouths, was trying to nip at her hand as she talked, but kept passing through it. But I managed to make a few more modifications, borrowing juice from the school's central power grid. Her smile got bigger somehow and even more chilling. A blue-hued, translucent winged squid thing crawled up from behind her back and onto her head, and was staring at me with one huge, unblinking eye. I want to share with everyone here today, she cried, a bit over the top, if you ask me, and threw that second switch. What happened next was surreal. The moment that switch made contact with the connectors, all of the lights in the gymnasium blew. There were no sparks or glass breaking, but there was some loud pops, the smell of ozone, and the entire inside of the place was plunged into near darkness with the ambient light that was emitting from the Philco the only thing you could see. And that was getting brighter, being surrounded by an ever brightening halo of light, the deep-seated humming noise getting even louder, getting to where you could hardly bear to hear it. I could feel it in my teeth. For a few seconds, there was the murmuring of everything inside that gymnasium, suddenly finding themselves in the dark, and the sounds of the occasional bump into a table. That was when the emergency backup light switched on. There was maybe a split second after that when the screaming started. Give me a moment. I need to finish this pint before going on. There. Deep breath here. Okay, I want to let you know that I know what I saw, and what I'm about to tell you will sound like I'm making it all up. I don't care. It's the truth. What I saw after blinking a couple of times was like an entire alien world superimposed on ours within the gymnasium. Large, sinister-looking plants, each one looking like they were moving independently from each other. Some even looked like they were somehow looking at us. Vines snaking down from overhead, looking like they were coming out of a mist that shrouded the entire place. All sorts of giant insectoid things even more nightmare-inducing than the ones we saw before the blackout, flying and crawling around, and beginning to dive bomb and attack everyone once it became clear that they could perceive our sudden existence within their world as well, though intangibly. And everyone could see them. Everyone was either screaming, running, or both. Kids, their parents, the teachers, and everyone. Running around, flailing their arms, pushing over tables and chairs and each other to get away from the nightmare fuel that they all found themselves in. Bits of destroyed science, experiments strewn everywhere, trampled underfoot. At one point, I saw the superintendent run by, slapping away at his head, shouting, "Get him off! Get him off! Get them off!" I saw the vines come alive, moving by themselves, trying to snag and wrap around people, unable to make a purchase. I looked down, and my left leg looked like it was enveloped in a tubular thing, like one of those sea anemones, slowly engulfing and ingesting me from the ground up. I could see my leg through the thing. Only I could also feel it. I pulled my leg up, and I could feel the tug of the thing holding on somehow. They were starting to become more tangible. I looked back up, and sure enough, you could see some people starting to get tripped up by those vines. Some kids were beset by several of those insectoid things, their screams doing nothing to free them. Jenny was frozen in one place, 3 mutant spider things wrapping her up in a viscous webbing. And Andy, I couldn't see where Andy ran off to. And Alexis, the cause of all of this pandemonium, she just stood where she was, laughing hysterically. The Philco device looked like it was about to shake off into another dimension at any given second, the way it was glowing and pulsating like it was. I couldn't move, stuck in one place, frozen by that deep thrumming that emitted from the thing. Also, sheer terror by what was going on around me. That had a big factor in my paralysis. Through all of this, that girl looked like you took her to Disney World, the way she was gleefully giggling and clapping, taking in everything with her eyes big and round. Sorry about that. Then finally she looked directly at me, and I'm pretty sure she was about to say something when she was eaten. Some big beak-like mouth swooped down from overhead and sucked her right into the maw hole. I didn't even try to look and see what that beak mouth thing was attached to. I'm not sure I would have wanted to. I was having enough trouble trying to process what was happening around me without the prospect of seeing whatever was big enough to eat a mid-sized 11-year-old girl whole in one bite, helping things out. Also, did I mention I was being eaten by an anemone? I had my own issues. Fortunately, right after the kid was eaten, things went dark again. I'm fairly certain the power blew entirely, as that Philco device went completely dark, and either the emergency lights blew themselves from a blackout, or someone saw what was going on and thought of turning off all the lights would either make the bag things go away. Either way, suddenly I couldn't see anything, but I could still hear the screaming and general chaos from everyone inside that gymnasium. So I was still conscious. Fortunately, almost immediately after that, my brain decided that it had enough and was going to put itself on standby, because suddenly I found myself in the blissful oblivion of having blacked out. I came to sometime later that day at the Fremont Hospital emergency room. I was one of several surprise guests there from what was being referred to as the science fair incident. No one died. Everyone turned out to be fine, save for the normal cuts and bruises one gets from freaking out and causing mass pandemonium trying to run out of a building in a not so orderly fashion. But several of us were being held overnight for observation. And since I was unconscious when the EMTs arrived, I was one of those lucky guests of the Fremont Area Medical Center. As it turns out, Andy was the only one that kept his head relatively together during all of that. On the following Monday, he told me that the entire incident lasted for about a minute, but due to circumstances, he understood why it felt longer. He said that right when the emergency lights came back on, he ignored everything that appeared around us and managed to go around to the back of her display before everyone else had time to notice what had just happened. And while everything was going insane around him, he kept his head and stopped it all by unhooking the car battery from the radio. After all that, it just seemed so anticlimactic, stopping the big evil hell dimension from taking over our reality by simply removing the batteries. It's like successfully performing an exorcism by just asking politely for the evil spirit to leave. And just like you would suspect, from that point on, everyone just went on with their lives, pretending like nothing happened the previous Friday afternoon. Jenny seemed a bit more jumpy than usual from then on out, and she developed a slight tick in her right eye. And of course, I have a great story to entertain everyone on Saturday nights here at the pub, silver lining and all that. And that's my doozy of a story. And like I said, it was all true. Sure, the official reports on this regarded it as a rare episode of mass hysteria brought on by some kind of hallucinogen and another science project that went awry there. But I know what I saw and what others say they saw before everyone changed their stories to fit the popular opinion. And yeah, sometimes I have my doubts, but then once in a while, in the corner of my eye, I see something crawling on the wall of my home or floating just out of my line of vision and say, why were you so interested in this story of mine anyway? Miskatonic University, never heard of the place. Do they have a decent football team? The end.
Yay! I love that story so much.
Me too.
I have forgotten how long that was.
It's a good story though, man. And I remember being there for those science fairs. Like I have a better picture than all of you because I was actually in that building and I know what it's like in there. And
Oh yeah.
It was so much fun. I love that story, dude.
It's good.
Rich Oscar does too. Yes, he does.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, I had this with me at Terrificon. I'm like, it's my emotional support squirrel.
Oh,
It might have
that's
stole
okay.
Brian Azzarello's wallet, but it's my emotional support squirrel.
I am jelly of the emotional support squirrel, so
He has clothing as well. He's not wearing any tonight, but he recently adopted a nephew because he doesn't understand genetics and he has an alcohol problem, and he was hoping for a kidney transplant, maybe if he needed one. He's not that smart of a squirrel, but he had to wear that to go to court and, complete the adoption and everything. So, yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
James, awesome job as always. Thank you so much for that one.
Very good.
Very good.
Good one.
It's
better with you read.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Jenny, you muted out.
It's much better. Sorry, it's much better with him reading it. I love reading it. Now it's much better hearing it.
That's cool.
Well, is this the part where I mentioned that it's going to be in a compilation?
Why, yes, it is.
Okay,
Very
it's going
cool.
to be in there. There we go.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
I thought I only had one story, but apparently I have 2 stories in it.
Cool.
Oh,
Right.
Very cool.
that's
So,
always a bonus.
there you go.
So buy it, folks. Go out to Fae Corps Publishing and pick yourself up a copy of Nightmare Whiskers, monster stories from all of the folks over at Fae Corps, which include most of the people in this podcast. So
One of my new favorite stories is in that one, so I'm excited to see how that goes.
That was my little ode to H.P. Lovecraft, where I wanted
Very
to make
good
it
job
dark
with
yet whimsical.
I love how it's Wednesday Addams basically being a Lovecraftian character. The way that you tie that in together has always I've known him for forever. So some of you guys are like, oh, does he tell the story all the time? It's like, no, I know him. I've been with him as he was writing it. Like we're sitting across the pub from each other and he's handing me a notebook. Like, can you read this? Well, phone, but same thing these days.
I don't know who you are, but sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna say, James, I love that you chose to read a story from that one because I was on the fence about reading mine from this one, and I think you just convinced me. So thank you, sir.
Raz is going to end on a red story,
and which I never do. I think I've done it maybe once before.
Yeah, Raz usually follows the Shawn and Channy way and is like, "This is a campfire, guys. We're telling campfire stories," and we're like, "Yeah, not all of us are as comfortable being natural storytellers as you. We can do it, but it's something that's like you got to prep a little bit, and he's just got it going on.
Seriously, you can give me a topic right before we go live, and I will tell you a whole story. I actually do that on purpose.
That is a talent.
Fun. I love it.
And they're detailed too. We had a fun game back on. We're on a Discord writing server that's called Right, and we would do. This is what started this up. Was we would do campfire stories there, and the fun part of it was always guess which parts Raz actually made up and which parts were real. And the thing is that generally the majority of it was real. There were a couple little hints here and there that were like, oh, that didn't actually happen. But it's like the parts that you're thinking aren't real are the parts that were real. It's the,
it's
it's a little,
I'm sorry, but whenever I hear one of Raz's stories like that, I play a little game called Spot the Little Caesars reference.
Little Caesars, baby. Oh yeah. My favorite garbage.
Oh God. We can't get him off of it. Okay. I'm getting us back on board, and because I am the squirrel mistress, we are starting to squirrel. I am also the Oh, you got it! Yay!
I found it. I'll play it one more time for you. You ready?
All right, we're hopping on to another crow. We're going back to Channy. She's got another story for us. So, everybody, woot!
The story is called A Place to Lay Your Head. A solitary man in loud yellow shorts searched the Australian tide pools, a basket of seashells swinging from his elbow. He spotted a conical shape and slipped on dark lava stones toward it. A Triton's trumpet. He grinned triumphantly as as the unoccupied shell he lifted from the water, easily measuring 20 inches long, a true shelling prize. You should put that back, mister. He had thought he was alone on this beach. He raised his head to see the small, swarthy young girl in the red sundress among the palms. Pardon? She pointed. You should leave that. Why? Is it illegal? It's for the hermits. He scoffed. Missy, hermit crabs don't get this big. Her lips pressed together, dark eyes shifting to the waves. They need homes. With a sardonic grin, he motioned. I'll just go put this back then. He turned as though to do so. That seemed sufficient enough for the girl, for when he turned back around, she had disappeared. Little nuisance, he muttered. Prize shell in hand, he returned to his beach towel and cooler in the dappled shade of the palm trees. He drank beer and played on his phone until a motion caught his eye. A hermit crab crawled onto the basket's rim, a plastic cap on its bottom. He plucked it up. That's my real estate, buddy. He flung the squirming crab away, grinning. Present secure and well buzzed, he lay down. The soothing susurration of the wind in the palms, calms of the tropical birds, the hiss and crash of the waves, lulled him to sleep. He blinked awake to a peculiar tapping and a loud squelch. He propped himself up on his elbows. His Titan's trumpet, that he had so proudly gained, was sliding down the beach, spidery white and with some feature rippling inside in front of it. Hey! Then, two unfamiliar objects by its basket caught his eye, round like small coconuts. One both waved covered in algae and barnacles. The other lay upside down, a tall bowl turned to the sky. The portion of its ball had strange, uneven segments. Still crispy and juicy, the man finished the bread and looked at it for reflection. Teeth. The bone bowl had little human teeth.
Jenny?
Sorry.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Can you turn for a second? Because your mic's cutting out again.
Better?
Move it a little bit more. Sorry. Still has a demon with it. Try the cord. Moving it a little bit. Oh. Can hear you, but it's still cutting out. Raz, do you have any tips? I can't unmute you, so.
Not offhand. It's a wireless headset.
There's a wireless 2-way
Okay. Yeah, it seems like there's a short going on, an occasional short with your mic somewhere. With that, literally, the only thing that you can do is either resolder it or just move it around a bunch until it works again. We have these issues randomly all the time, man.
Yeah, don't feel bad.
How was that?
No. Still bad, yeah.
No. Okay.
I can only faintly hear you.
Oh, that's problematic. Let's see here. Yeah, my volume stuck down too low. That or I just need to learn how to project my voice.
You might be able to use the, if you have a laptop, you might be able to use the laptop mic since nobody else is talking right now.
Yeah, that could be good.
Okay. Let's try that.
That way there won't be any echo. Because we want to hear your story.
How was that? Is that better?
It's better. It's still a little staticky.
Okay. Switching.
No problem.
Testing? How's that?
There you go. You're awesome.
Oh, all right. Let's do that then.
Okay.
Skyway.
All right.
Where do you need me to start? At the beginning?
Yeah, that way we'll have a straight through cut. So.
Okay. We can do that.
All right.
Story's
Thank you.
called A Place. No problem. Thank you. A place to lay your head. A solitary man in loud yellow shorts searched the Australian tide pools, a basket of seashells swinging from his elbow. He spotted a conical shape and slipped on dark lava stones toward it. A Triton's trumpet. He grinned triumphantly at the unoccupied shell as he lifted it from the water, easily measuring 20 inches long, a true shelling prize. You should put that back, mister. He had thought he was alone on this beach. He raised his head to see a small, swarthy young girl in a red sundress among the palms. Pardon? She pointed. You should leave that. Why? Is it illegal? It's for the hermits. He scoffed. Missy, hermit crabs don't get this big. Her lips pressed together, dark eyes shifting to waves. They need homes. With a sardonic grin, he motioned. I'll just go put this back then. He turned as though to do so. That seemed sufficient for the girl, where when he turned back around, she had disappeared. Little nuisance, he muttered. Pride shell in hand, he returned to his beach towel and cooler in the dappled shade of the palm trees. He drank beer and played on his phone until a motion caught his eye. A small hermit crab crawled on the basket's rim, a plastic cap on its bottom. He plucked it up. That's my real estate, buddy. He flung the scrolling crab away, grinning. Prices secure and buzzed, he lay down. The soothing susurration of the winds of the palms, calls of tropical birds, and hiss and crash of the waves lulled him to sleep. He blinked awake to a peculiar tapping and a loud squelch. He propped himself up on his elbows. His prized Triton's trumpet slid down the beach, spidery white knees of some creature rippling in sight, carrying it away. Hey! Two unfamiliar objects by his basket also caught his eye. Round like small coconuts, one dome lay covered in algae and barnacles. The other lay upside down, a pale bowl turned to the sky. A portion of its wall had strange, uneven segments. Still tipsy from drinking, the man pinched its edge and lifted it for inspection. Teeth. The bone bowl had little human teeth. There were 3 holes, one's for eyes and a nose, a small, tiny skull. He dropped it, alarm shooting through his belly. Slime coated his fingers. The other round object moved, turning in place. Mossy teeth rested on thin white legs. The nose and eye sockets were full of slimy flesh. A tentacle with an oblong eye pushed through the skull socket toward his face. He flinched and stared back. What the? 2 serrated tentacles shot from the skull. The wind and waves continued their gentle hissing sound, ignorant of the scream that turned to gurgles. Only the tropical birds quieted, listening to the crunch and squelch sound. Quiet once again fell under the palms once more. The birds returned to their singing. The creature now moved into its new, roomier house, left a red trail in the sand, and disappeared into the endless dance of the waves. Home. That's it.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was good.
Nice and concise.
Yeah.
You got everything through. I very much enjoyed that.
Very tight story.
It was good. Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
I love that. Just sea stuff freaks me out. I'm from Nebraska. We don't see the ocean unless we travel really far. And I have only seen the same stretch of beach like 3 times. I've traveled with my mom multiple times down south, and we always end up on Gulf Shores in Alabama. And we have always parked within like 100 feet of the same parking spot, always go to the same little bench, take off our shoes and walk in the white sands. And like, I will not venture into the ocean because there are things there that I cannot comprehend. And my ancestors left it for a reason.
Right.
So
And the
I
ocean
think
wants
I
to
should
kill us
just
all.
stay away.
It
Exactly.
does.
My mother doesn't understand. She's just like, no, it's there for you. No,
Well,
it does not like us.
Being a former Navy brat, I've actually lived next to the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, me too.
My life. Yeah. And it's weird because recently my skin has been getting drier. There's been these slits around my neck that have started to appear, and my eyes are starting to bulge out, which is why my real self isn't on the camera right now. And I keep dreams of the water cities. It's rather bizarre.
Yeah.
There's a lotion for that.
Oh, excellent.
Gold Bond. I highly recommend it. Actually, I do. But
we had the Pacific Ocean tide pools where it was all rocky Oregon, Washington Beach. There was always interesting things in those tide pools.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. It was Washington, like Pacific Beach, Washington. Actual name of the place. It was about half an hour, 45 minutes away from Aberdeen, and I was just fascinated by the creatures that just lived under, in the water. It's like and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I picked up shells, and you could tell my family because we're the entire family walking in solid black long sleeve long pants down the White Sands beach, and everybody else is like in bathing suits, and we're like, no, you aren't going to get us in bathing suits around here. We're just going to wander around in our like cardigans and stuff.
Yeah. Beach wear is
They had a
whatever you wear
tractor.
to the beach. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
There's actually also a problem with some of the beaches for hermit crabs because some people are overshelling and they are taking away the homes for hermit crabs. So there's actually a really interesting movement where they're trying to get people to return shells or 3D printing shells because otherwise they are finding hermit crabs in just whatever trash they can find.
Oh, dude, what they need to do is 3D print a skull for those hermit crabs.
Yes.
So these
I've
tiny
seen the
skulls
little
still
hat.
going around.
Yep.
I have a question, as you seem to know about shells. All the little, like, the fan-shaped shells that we find have a little hole bored in them. It's just like they're ready for jewelry, but somebody was saying that that's a sea creature that actually bores the little holes into the random shells. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if they're pulling my leg or if they're serious. So do you happen to know?
To the internet. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
I know the hole you're talking about, though. So.
I heard
But
that
you've
too,
seen
though.
it, right?
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yes.
I've heard that same story. I've never looked it up to verify it, but I have heard it.
I'm like, it's custom made jewelry. Okay. Ready to go from the ocean. All right, Peggy, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right.
So I'm going to read something that I wrote because, as Shawn said, I don't have any spooky stories. I babysat once in the most haunted house in the neighborhood. Never saw anything. Nothing ever happened. So I write spooky stuff to get over the fact that I will never experience spooky stuff, which I'm kind of okay with. Like, knock on wood, like, I don't need to see a ghost to believe in them, so it's all good. So this story is called The Hatchet. Get it to work. Her pale reflection in the mirror did not differ from yesterday, and still she found her fingers brushing at the splatters of blood on her fine clothes. Wedding finery turned to ruin thanks to her no-good sister and her own husband. On the wall, not that she looked, was a photo of her and Philip on their wedding day, right after the ceremony when she was still blissfully in love before she caught him in the maid's room with her sister. Judith remembered the feeling, the flutter of her heart as it sank to the ground to be crushed by her heels as she ran from their chagrined faces. Shame, as the guests watched her race into the backyard, had made her wish to sink into the ground. Mostly, as evidenced by the hatchet always beside her, she felt rage. Not only at her new husband and betraying sister, no, she felt rage at the world. Which is why she had killed more than them on her wedding day. 5 guests joined them in caskets, and she felt no shame for that. The sheriff had fired his revolver 5 times at her. All 5 had hit, but she'd been in such a fine mood, splendid in blood and butchery, it had taken the sum total of them to put her down. What Judith had not expected was to remain in the home. She had free rein of the house itself and the gardens around. There was no need for a fence to hold her in place. The singular time she tried to walk onto the street, there had been nothing on the other side. If she stood on the porch, she was perfectly able to see the rest of the world, but if she tried to join it, there was nothing. Rejected by hell itself, someone said at the bottom of the stairs. A female voice, unusual. Most of the so-called ghost hunters were men. Oh, there were the occasional women who claimed a kinship, despite having no deaths to their name, but most of them she ignored. With nothing better to do, she drifted down the stairs, the hatchet warming her hand as always. The town's bloodiest massacre, the short redhead said to a camera held by another woman. It is believed she was rejected by her husband on their wedding day as he preferred her sister, but as she was brutally gunned down before anyone might ask, there are no records of the truth. I do not care he preferred my sister, Judith muttered, only that he did not make his choice known until after he had tied me to him until death. Although he hadn't, she'd seen no sign of any of those killed on her blessed day. The Reverend had called it that, her blessed day. She'd killed him before any others, excepting her faithless sister and worse husband. We'll get the camera set up and be right back to explain our plan for tonight, the redhead said. When the camera light stopped blinking, she snorted. And our plan was to fake a few scary noises and film a few suspicious shadows. This might be the place, the one with the camera said. Don't be ridiculous, Susan. All the time since the murders, and no one has gotten any proof this place is haunted. But it's expected after all, the blood-wedding murder house. I hate that name, Judith said, but no one heard. A long time ago, before cameras and ghost shows, she found out she was capable of being heard, only if she desired it. She never did to people like this, the kids who broke into the house she had fun with, or she had until one had fallen down the stairs and been hurt. That injury she felt guilty over. She'd only been playing with the teenagers. He hadn't died, and so she was thankful. Okay, let's film this part and we can set up the cameras after. Time to tell the audience everything they know. Judith yawned, boredom not absent from death, and watched as they laid out their equipment. Over the years, since electronics had become mass-produced and cheap, it was all the same. In the old days, each medium had her own tricks. In her hand, the hatchet felt warm. Judith focused on the boredom. Whatever the reason, sometimes the hatchet wanted to direct things. As a hatchet was good for chopping alone, she'd always done her best to avoid the temptation. Some of her visitors were temptation on the hoof, and she prided herself on what a good woman she'd been. Since death. Her attention was drawn back to the ghost hunters as they pulled at their gadgets. Nothing new. Someday she expected new toys, but lately they all used the same stuff, which was dull. Let's start with the spirit box, the redhead said. Judith snorted, and the hatchet burned her flesh. Well, the hatchet burned the palm of her hand where her flesh would be if she was human. Pain. It was pain, dead or alive. I'm sure all of you at home know what this is, the redhead told the camera, but we're going to tell any ghosts here how to use it, because we want them to speak to us, to learn the truth hidden here in the blood-wedding murder house. Great, Judith said to the hatchet. The spirit box. I get it. Radio frequencies and white noise and words, as if she hadn't heard it all before, like they were the first. Why do they all think I'm a moron? Although if they're trying to speak to my unbeloved, it would make sense. Are you listening, Judith? No, Judith said, but not so they might hear, because I know this, and I'm not going to speak. And she did not. Until the fifth time in the third room, they explained the spirit box again. The hatchet glowed red in her hand, and she thought of the bloodstains on her wedding gown. They looked so faded and worn. The rest of her might suffer so, but the blood should not. It deserved to be fresh, warm, rich in color. Will you shut up? She screamed. The cameras did not hear, and nothing heard, no one, and she sought to change that fact. Susan, what the fuck just happened? The redhead shouted as she dropped the powerless spirit box. I don't know, Chris. Everything died. You explain it all the time, Judith said, and this time they heard. Over and over, as if I'm an idiot, as if I have not paid attention to every last one of you who has entered my home, and always the same thing. Here's this, here's that, here's how it works. I'm not an idiot. Who's there? Chris demanded. Reveal yourself. Fine, Judith said, and she let them see her. But you tell the rest I have had enough of being considered an idiot and a fool and a woman who does not listen. The redhead, Chris, a ridiculous name for a woman, fainted. As the hatchet glowed a warm red and her wedding gown grew whiter in need of purifying, the other woman fled from the sight. And suddenly Judith felt the fool. These women had done nothing, the same as the guests at her wedding had done nothing, other than witnessing her shame, which was not their fault. only she'd been able to kill her fresh husband and his partner in betrayal once more. I'm going to let you go, Judith told the comatose woman. But I swear the next idiot to think I'm an idiot will know exactly how smart and angry I was, and remain. 6 months later, the news crew stood on the yard. So many. Police tried to keep them away, but they appeared to be multiplying as Judith peeked out the curtain. Some part of her, the part that liked to hold the hatchet, that liked to look at the stains in the mirror, was pleased. For too long she'd been mocked. Last night had been the last straw. Those men who would not shut up and mocked her and her family. They had come to learn the truth, and she had showed them. All 4 of them were scattered in pieces inside the house. Blood spray along the walls left indelible reminders on the wallpaper of their just deserts. The hem of her wedding gown had trailed through the pools of blood and become, she thought, permanently stained. Carrying the hatchet this morning was impossible. It burned to look upon, let alone touch, so she only kept near it. No one living saw it resting against the window seat where she sat and watched everyone inside and out. There had not been this much entertainment in so long. Despite the apparent fading of stains, she knew it was too soon to take up the hatchet. No, let some time pass first. Catch them unawares. This is my home, Judith told the unaware people in the room, and I have had enough of visitors. The end.
Lovely.
That was. Do you ever watch
lovely
these ghost shows and like wonder if the ghosts just get tired of hearing it explained over and over and over? That's where this came from. I was like, we were watching Ghost Adventures, and I'm all like, do you think these guys at the Villisca Axe Murder House don't know the drill by now? And so
I really loved that from her point of view. That was fabulous.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. I like to write stories about women with axes and swords and things. So, yeah.
I keep a couch machete. That's what I do.
Nice.
Yeah, I've lived on my own. I've lived here for over 20 years. I just have to reach over and yeah.
Oh, there you go.
It's if you're going to answer the door and you live alone and you're a woman, I don't live in a neighborhood that I can like safely go on walks in. Even though I'm in Nebraska, we still have bad people sometimes. So it's like couch machete. I also have an ice pick. I can't get to it though, but it's like the awl type. So it's like
nice.
Through the door, I can either give you a tracheotomy or a front orbital lobotomy if you're as short as I am. It just depends because I'm pretty short.
If your peephole is shallow enough, just
That's true. That's true.
I just love having it. My mom got freaked out one night and was like, hey, can you come over to my house because somebody was ringing on my doorbell earlier and people are walking through my yard. I don't know what's going on. And she lives in a really nice neighborhood. And my nephew, I can't drive, I have epilepsy. And my nephew's just like, yeah, I'll give her a ride. Don't worry about it. We'll get there. And he comes to pick me up. And I'm like, I'm bringing along the couch machete and the ice pick. And she's like, good. I need protection. And we get halfway there and she's like, you didn't really bring those, did you? And I'm like, yes, I did. I of course brought those. If you're being like, have a home invasion potential, I'm deadly serious about taking care of you. And she's like, well, I hope you don't get bowled over. And I took pictures and she's just like, oh my God, I asked for a kid to come over and not a ninja army. And I'm like, well, then you asked the wrong fucking kid, man. Because like, Jenny knows. Yes, I always come equipped with weapons.
Well, my contingency has always been be naked as possible at all times, and I have a rather large quantity of staffs that when they come in, the idea is to, oh my God, what are you? And then that would just pause them enough for me to just pop them.
Yeah, that'll work.
With which staff?
Trust me, at my age, there's only one staff.
Does it comfort you? Oh God, this comic I read the other night. Anyway, yeah, no, I have a weapon within 5 feet of me wherever I'm at in my apartment. one of them's a Stephen King book, but blunt force trauma from an age.
That to begin with. Yeah.
Russian novels, they work. I was gonna wait for Raz to get back. Who'd we lose? We lost somebody. I'm lost. I'm still lagging, so I'm kind of behind everybody here. I don't know. Yeah, I have a story. I was gonna have Raz give me a lead in, but
the internet's having trouble tonight. I'm waiting for us to do that.
Friday, am I still here? Who did we lose?
Yes, you're here.
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought you were saying that me. Except
for Raz.
Okay.
And one comment before you continue. Where I come from, it's normal to end up with possums and cats the size of most females on your porch. So it was very much needed to have something to defend yourself before you went to the bus stop.
Yeah. That's fair.
I'm with you though. The ghost
has been pretty nice.
My mother had a raccoon.
I put cat food out, and it doesn't even fuss at us. We step over it, and it's just like, it's like, it just looks very snobbily confused that we would dare to just hop over it and disturb its eating cat food.
Mm-hmm. Possums are great. I love them. They're like one of my favorite animals.
I couldn't tell from your Discord at all.
right. Wow.
But the cat the size of Carrie that was as black as her shirt was the problem.
Yeah. Cats can be a little finicky at times.
Yeah.
To put it nicely.
Right.
We had a time.
He's just scared though.
We had a time where my mom heard hissing and stuff on her front deck and went out and there was a cat that was being backed up into the wall by a raccoon. And so into her door. So she pulled open the door and the cat bolted in the house, and she's allergic. She hates cats. She'll put up with family cats. She raises catnip for all of us because everybody but her has a cat. And there was a mama raccoon and its babies, and they were crawling into her wheelie bin, a dumpster. And so she popped it up, and one of the babies was stuck down inside, and it couldn't get out. So the mama was standing there, and the cat had gotten trapped and scared, and so she's trying to get rid of this cat, but also a mad raccoon coming at you is not something pleasant, and this mama raccoon is trying to get her baby. So mom is smart, and she runs and grabs a broom and sticks it handle down into the dumpster, and the baby raccoon is able to crawl out, join its mom, and then they left, and then she was able to throw the cat out. But but the combination of your two ghost stories is ghosts have got to be tired of being retaught how to use technology every time, and they can, when available. I was just on ghost tours over the weekend, and there's various ghosts. It's like the peekaboo ghost and the white lady and stuff that you get, but somebody had some great pictures of them, and
awesome.
Yeah, and you're like, they know how it works. They just decide whether you're an asshole or not, and
nope.
Exactly.
And make themselves shown when they want to.
Well, I wonder about the ghosts that are in the houses that were made into haunted attractions, like they, one time, for a couple of months during the year, they have to put up with humans going around, just going, oh, these jokers again. Oh my gosh.
Exactly. I feel like.
Okay.
Go on. Oh, James, what is it? Highway 75 that goes all the way from where you're at into Lincoln?
Yeah.
Yeah. My cousin from Oakland used to drive that, and he would stop at all the haunted houses along the way. not haunted, but abandoned houses along the way. And it's like, cuz I love you. I love your sense of adventure, but those houses aren't necessarily as haunted as they are dangerous simply because they have not been maintained. So you have to keep an eye on that kind of thing as well. But they started tearing him down, and he was really, really upset because it's just like, but I had all this fun. And I'm like, you didn't get tetanus. Be happy.
We call those HAF houses, haunted as fuck. When we drive by them, we're like, oh, look, HAF. So, yeah.
If you play the cow game, it's like, oh, the ghost got your cows. They're dead.
Yeah. I do point out the cows, too. Yes, definitely. I do have the cow on my shoulder. So, yeah.
I had one friend who played the cow game where it was like, you drive and those are my cows, those are my cows. And then if you go by hay, that's my hay. All your cows starved to death. And somebody else plays it where if you go by a cemetery, you say all your cows are dead.
Oh my gosh.
Jenny, what do you have there? Like the giant gerbil from hell.
That's awesome.
Yeah, giant gerbil.
We're friends. Yay.
Just listening in.
She has creepier stuff there, trust me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm working on a fun haunted story with that kind of idea behind it, with people are stupid and ghosts are not, and they're just like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? I don't get it.
I know.
Anyway, now that I have a Raz back, I'm going to do my story real quick. So this isn't so much.
You told me to do that.
Yes. Oh, I did. I need it because my story this is more speculative than it is horror. I usually do a lot of horror, but this is a more fun one. And before anybody says anything, my mother had a talking crow, and I have studied other talking crows, and they do not talk with the caw sound. They speak like they learned to hear speech, is the way that they regurgitate it. So I have talking crows in my story, and they aren't going to be like, caw, 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 because that's not how they actually talk. So that's a real fact for y'all. All right, give me one more, Raz. This is called Dirty Birdies. I think you're muted, so it didn't come through, but okay.
Dang it, hold on.
Diane. Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Diane woke up groggily after hitting her snooze twice. She had to get to work, hungover or not. Who am I bouncing off of? Okay. Diane woke up groggily after hitting her snooze twice. She had to get to work, hungover or not, and she needed a shower badly. The whole work crew had gone out last night after the restaurant closed and stayed at Jimmy's bar until last call, sucking down pitcher after pitcher, along with a couple of shots that Tanya had insisted on. In her bathroom, she first felt the need to brush her teeth to get rid of the taste of licking a bar ashtray from her mouth. Brushing her teeth made her cough up a bit of phlegm, and she had a slight gag reflex as she got to the back of her tongue. Her shower was quick and perfunctory, just a quick scrub and shampoo to get rid of the scent of the previous evening. She got dressed, grabbed a cup of coffee she had brewed in her Keurig, and headed out the back door of her apartment complex to her car. As she was unlocking the door, she heard something near the dumpster. A crow stood there, pulling open a discarded fast food bag. "Fuck you," it said. Diane jumped a bit and did a double take. The crow just stared at her. Turning back to her car, she got in, and as she closed the door, she could have sworn that once again she heard a "fuck you" from the bird. She rolled down her window as she pulled out. "Fuck you too," she called out, and then headed to work. Miles and Jake were getting ready for school. Their mother, Marianne, was making them breakfast. "Miles, when you get done getting dressed, please run the trash out. It's collection day and I don't want to miss it," she called out from behind the stove. "Okay, Mom," Miles said. He had gotten his backpack ready for school already and was always more awake than Jake was. After he got his hair combed out and his backpack to the table, he grabbed the trash bags from near the back door. When he got near the dumpster, he set them down to begin hefting them up one at a time. He had to swing them up a bit to get them to go over the top of the bin. "Shit! Shit! Bastard!" he heard in a strange voice from the dumpster as he let the first one go. He stepped back and a couple of crows flew out and began scolding him in a combination of caws and curses. "Shit! Ah! Ah! Shithead! One called to him. He ran back inside the apartment building and up to his brother's room. Jake, come with me. You gotta see this. The birds are swearing. He pulled his brother out back with him under much protesting. Miles, I am not ready for shit, ah, fucker, bastard, came the calls of the crows. What the fuck? Asked Jake. I know, right? How cool is that? Don't tell Mom. She'll freak, said Jake. I have to get my school stuff. Maybe they'll be here when we get back. As the boys went back in the house, one of the birds watched them leave. Fuck off! I haven't been more embarrassed in my life. He put it up on YouTube, Olivia exclaimed. She was sitting at the table surrounded by other members of the college faculty, along with some retired members. We're going to have students stalking our yard by the end of the day. You didn't have to tell them where we lived, John. She looked at her husband, radiating scorn. Now, Liv, this is an important phenomenon. How often do birds start talking? John tried to adjust himself. Do you guys want to see the video I got on my phone? He offered the others at the table. I've already got over 20,000 views. None of them want to hear such foul language before lunch, his wife said. Most of the men and a few of the women looked disappointed. Their waitress nearly dropped the tray of coffee she was carrying over. I'm sorry, did you say something about swearing birds? I'm afraid so, dear, said Olivia with a sniff. Would you like to see the video? John asked. Oh, sorry, no thank you. I need to get these dropped off and get some orders out. I had a crow cuss me out this morning when I was coming to work. I thought I was losing it a bit, said Diane as she passed out the coffee. Oh my, whereabouts do you live? What did it say to you? Inquired John. I'm in the near south, but I don't think anyone would really appreciate my repeating what I heard, she said. Good girl, you have manners, unlike some of us, said Olivia. The folks at the table looked intrigued. So, we have confirmations now of cursing crows in the near south and the heights. I wonder how far they've spread. Everyone, let me know if you hear of any more. I'm going to keep checking with my students today. This is so exciting. John rubbed his hands together before picking up his coffee. So very exciting indeed. On the playground at Humbert Middle School, Tabby McIntosh was whispering to a group of her friends. Really? Come over to the back with me. There's a bunch of them behind the school by the trash. If we don't get to them before the teachers do, they'll shoo them away. A small group of kids snuck around the school, Tommy Larson keeping an eye out for the playground monitor. Look, said Tabby. So what? There are always crows back here, said Julie Newberg as they got closer. Fuck you, dickweed, cunt, bitch, fuck you, ah, called out the crows. Julie slapped her hand across her mouth as the rest of the kids started laughing. Oh, wow, she said. Do they say anything besides swears? Hey, Bertie, do you like sandwiches? She asked as she tore off a piece of her ham and cheese and threw it at one of the birds. A crow promptly fluttered down to the discarded morsel. Fuck off, it said as it scarfed down the bite. I guess not. Mrs. Barton came around the corner. What are you kids doing back here? All of the kids groaned. Tommy, hissed Tabby. Sorry, he whispered back sheepishly. I wanted to see them too. Well, the playground monitor waited. Eat shit, bitch, damn, pussy, yelled the crows. Well, I never. Get back to the front of the school. In fact, get back inside. I'm calling recess over. She stormed back around the building, blowing her whistle to summon all of the other kids back inside. Damn it, said Julie. This was just getting fun. Miles and Jake were inside watching TV. They'd gotten a chance to play out back and watch the crows for about half an hour before their mom came out, saw what was going on, and made them go back inside. She didn't seem pissed, but a tiny grin told them that they weren't in trouble per se. She just couldn't leave them out there and be a good, responsible parent. Marianne sat down on the sofa with them and changed the channel to the news. The boys groaned and were about to start complaining until they saw the top story. And in unusual news today, it seems a plague of swearing crows has descended upon Colchester. Professor John Watkins posted a video on YouTube of the birds in his backyard when he was getting ready to leave for work this morning, which became a viral sensation, amassing over 100,000 views in less than 10 hours. It has been steadily climbing. Many others have recorded similar videos, and the hashtags Colchester Crows and Dirty Birdies have been soaring in the ratings. No one seems to know what brought about this phenomenon. We spoke to an ornithologist at Colchester University, Dr. Holloway, and he told us that crows are particularly bright birds, able to speak to each other in their own language. They can use tools, create tools, and pass on detailed information to each other. They are also able to speak in human languages and pass on their knowledge to others. His current theory is that somehow a group of them were trained to swear and released within the city. He believes that crows who weren't trained will be picking up on the new behavior soon and begin mimicking their peers. Police have asked us to pass along the following safety precautions. Though we know they are a nuisance, please do not try any of the following to eliminate them, as it may endanger other creatures as well as humans. Do not put out poison for them. Do not lay traps. And remember, firing a weapon in the city limits is illegal. Police are working with animal control in order to come up with a plan to rid Colchester of the problem. Keep in mind also that crows have excellent memories and, as we mentioned earlier, can communicate with each other in highly detailed descriptions. So if you try to attack or harm them, you might get more than you bargained for. The anchorman gave a staged chuckle, then looked over to his left. And now with the weather, Mr. Mark Fowler. Marianne flipped through a couple of other news stations and saw that they had gained at least national notoriety for swearing birds. The boys giggled beside her and she rolled her eyes. She had watched several of the YouTube videos and TikToks earlier in the day and was actually impressed with the amount of work that had to have gone into this, whatever it was. It couldn't have been much worse it could have been much worse, she supposed. A week after the foul-mouthed murders had descended upon Colchester, there had been 27 arrests for firearms discharge, 153 arrests for putting out poisonous foods to tempt the crows, 18 homeless people hospitalized, and 39 pets that had died from eating said poisons, and a whopping 5 crows known to have died. Crows were smart. They communicated. Even without social media and television, they congregated, passed on information, and were teaching other crows what they knew. News reporters had flown in from around the country, and animal control was under scrutiny for not being able to do much about the problem. They weren't spreading disease. They weren't attacking people, except for those who tried to attack them first. They were just offensive. The general plan was just to hope they got over their proclivity of using human curse words and resumed behaving more like normal crows eventually. People protested both for and against the birds, though no one had much of an idea what they were protesting for. The crows certainly didn't care. And life went on. 15 miles out of town, on a farmstead with numerous large buildings on it, Colin Whitaker opened the largest red barn wearing coveralls and a mask. He walked up and down the rows of cages, making sure that the crows were all healthy, well-fed, and watered. On the screens mounted on the walls were scenes from town and across the world, local places of worship and persons in traditional garb for their religions. People of different ethnicities and people of different distinct styles and age groups were shown for a couple of minutes at a time or in short videos whilst the speakers blasted out ethnic and religious slurs for the crows to match to the specific examples shown to them. The pilot project had worked much better than he could have hoped. It was nearing time for Phase 2, Project Prejudices. A small grin formed on his face as the crows repeated the words coming from the speakers at the appropriate times. It might be a lot of work, but anarchy was fun. The end.
Nice. That was awesome.
That was good. I like that. Yeah. Nice.
That made me giggle a lot.
Thank you. I like having fun, and I love my crows. Good God, the Yeti appeared again!
Grr, there. Okay. I am understood. I seem to be pasty.
I am judging you.
Who doesn't?
All right. Jenny, are you ready? Jenny, are you ready? Where'd you go?
Yes,
There
I
you
think
went.
I might be. Hi. Tonight I'm going to be reading #Cemetery Lovers Remorse. They pulled off the asphalt onto the dirt road with the signs saying cemetery. They knew it was down the road. It came up for Ken on Google Maps when he came to scout out the old cemetery for one of the big names of his town. The place would be great for his report on local history. He knew it would be great for Michael's blog on cemetery exploration. Now, Google is saying the closest cemetery by the Kennebrew name is 2.5 hours away. Dude, it isn't even showing up on the map anymore, Ken explained. Michael furrowed his brow, already feeling unease. Something doesn't want people to find this place, but why Ken, he wondered. They passed houses, trees, dust and dirt, roads. 3008 and 3006 went by as they traveled down 3007. It was a beautiful sunny day, so bright and clear, not the type of day or atmosphere most people expected when visiting a cemetery. 3000 finally came into view. They turned down and followed the road flanked by thick woods to the cemetery at the end. Michael parked the car by the fence on the left of the road. He didn't want to drive into the cemetery. They got out and started walking around the perimeter to the right of the cemetery. Michael felt something like anger from the graves around him. At the far end, something felt akin to joy, with something sinister underneath. He wasn't going to find out what it was. While you take pics, I'm going to find some of the stones that are from the early 1900s, if possible, Ken told Michael. Michael smiled and nodded in agreement. He wanted to find out if he could figure out find out the weird feeling. He took a few wide shots. The Hernandezes have 6 graves in a row, fenced off from the rest of the cemetery. At the foot of each grave was a stone saying who they were, such as mother and father. As he walked the path of the road, he saw 3 graves in a row by the name of Kennebrew. Then a married couple, the Rollins, with a tree that seemed like it was dying behind their stones. One of the graves was so old it was hard to see if it had words carved on it. Michael felt the anger in his chest again. Was it because there were graves under the road, or the tree growing out of the grave behind the Rollins? He got shots of the gravestones and stepped back in the grass to get good pictures of the tree that looks half dead. He looked to his right, and in the middle he saw there were no tombstones, but 20 feet back, there were 20 feet back from where he stood were newer tombstones. It was the same all the way down to the trees. Old graves, about 4 graves deep. The corner right back of him was full of newer graves than the other corner, which looked to just have a few older graves. Took wide shots to make sure he had these observations on film. Nothing was evident except all the new graves were all within a year of each other for the Kennebrew family at the backpack corner starting about 2018. He looked across the road and saw the grave with a bright pink slab on top and a beautiful tombstone with what looked like a prom queen carved in it. He walked closer and took a picture. All of the ones on this side of the road were within the past 35 years, except for 3 graves that were from the 1910s. He was able to pinpoint the ones that didn't have anything like the feeling from the dirt road to the new graves. One has a metal marker in the shape of a cowboy on a horse. He had never seen a metal tombstone in person. He couldn't find any actual clues to why there was so much anger. Kenneth found some of the older tombstones around a half-dead tree. Seemed to be growing out of one of the graves. Started etching it with the charcoal his charcoal of that tombstone first. This was the first time he had ever seen the name Canzetter. Born 1869 and died 9 years later. So sad. He stood up and turned around to look for older graves. Why was there such a large gap? Started walking towards the far corner that had fewer graves but older stones. He found more from the late 1800s to the early 1900s and etched those. He had names to research for his report and felt better. They both got pictures and some B-roll footage from the separate walks around the cemetery and met at the very back. A path was cut in the trees with a tree down at the entrance. As they looked down the path, Ken asked, "Do you feel that?" "Yes. It's making me sick. It feels like it's not what it's projecting. Something way more sinister and old. Very, very old." Michael told him the best way he could figure. Ken dropped his etching and charcoal as he started to walk down the path. He realized Ken didn't hear anything he tried to warn him about. Michael put his camera around his neck and grabbed his friend in a fireman's carry and put him in the car. He made sure the child lock was on before he went back to get Ken's stuff. Ken yelled, "Come on, man! What the hell?" Finally, out of whatever trance he was in, Michael picked up all his friend's etching stuff and got in the driver's seat. "You can't go down that path." "I don't like what's there," Michael explained, in hopes of saving his friend. Ken said nothing all the way back to his place. "I love you, man. See you tomorrow," Michael said, and left him there and prayed to any god who would listen. He would get to see his friend. He would get to as he got in his car and headed home. At home, he set up the blog post and enjoyed the evening with the girl of his dreams and went to bed. He had a feeling he would never see his friend again. Ken drove down the dirt roads back to the cemetery. Michael just didn't understand. He had to see who was down that path. They were calling him. He didn't know how. Finally, he turned down 3000 again. As he traveled down the dirt road, he wondered why it was so far from 3002 and 3003 where he lived. It was miles away, nearly in the next town over. It was considerably darker down this road. It had no streetlights and was flanked by trees on either side until he reached the cemetery. He drove to the very end of the dirt road where the pathway through the trees opened up. He got out and stepped over the downed tree and walked down the dark path, hoping not to fall. He could hear the insects and the animals of the night. It was his preference not to meet them. He found the clearing from the moonlight, he could see objects were scattered around it. They broke under his feet as he walked to the middle where the light was brighter. He picked one up and realized it was a bone. Suddenly the wood went quiet. Out the corner of his eye, he saw something move. A shadow floated around the perimeter of the clearing. He stood still and watched as it came closer. It circled him and landed in front of him. It started morphing into something bigger than him. Its body was the shape of a bear with long arms and sharp, long claws. Its head was the shape of a horse with long, sharp, pointy teeth. Ken tried to run and fell. His feet were tangled in something. He looked back up to see its maw open and unhinged. Michael's phone rang. It was the Six Flags theme song from the 2004 commercial with the dancing old guy. Ken's mom is calling? "Hey, Mom, what's up?" "Did Kenny spend the night?" "He didn't show up at work and isn't at home," she said. She sounded worried. "No, ma'am. It's just Friday and I," he answered, confused and groggy. "Congratulations on taking that big step in your relationship, honey," she lauded him. "Thanks, Mom. We will check all our main haunts and see what we can do," he told her, trying to think of some places he could be. Thank you, honey. Call me if you see him, she said, and hung up before he could say anything. He sat and thought about the shop off the main with the magic supplies, their favorite local restaurant, and the cemetery from yesterday. That place scared him to the pit of his stomach. Honey bun, what can I do to help? Friday asked as she broke him out of his thoughts. He gave her a list of places to check out. After they dressed and grabbed a to-go cup of coffee, they set out on their search. He went to the place that was niggling his mind first. Past the trees and houses and dust, he got to the cemetery and saw Ken's car. But no Ken. He jumped out of his car and looked around, and in his car, he did a speed walk around the cemetery. That means he stopped and reached out with the extra sense. Whatever's down that path was joyful. It was almost laughing. With a heavy sigh, he got back in his car and made the call to Ken's mom, Friday, and to the police. They came within 15 minutes. He told him all he could prove without mentioning the things that no one could believe. They told him not to go on any major trips. He promised the usual mundane life stuff would only happen. He let Friday know on his way back to the house what he thinks happened. Ken's mom called with the news of them finding a bloody skeleton with his clothes and wallet on it. They would be able to prove it was him with his dental records. And that's it.
Hell yeah.
Awesome job, Sadie.
Very
Nice. Yeah.
Cemeteries.
Ooh,
You write
yeah.
such good cemetery stories.
Really
Thank you. Yeah, it was really good. I liked it.
I appreciate you
We're
guys. I would create it.
We appreciate you being here. So, Beck, going to use that word a lot. Appreciate.
It's a good word.
Friday uses it. We had a joke going on, and we were making trading cards, and I was making a mock-up of one, and she always says, "I appreciate you," and so I was like, "She appreciates you," and they were like, "Yes, keep that on the card." We are missing Channy for a moment, as she has some puppy problems going on, or puppy potty problems maybe. So Raz, are you ready to round us off for the evening?
I am. You guys hear me okay?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Round us off, big boy. Ooh.
All right. So, a long time ago, when I first was getting started in the world of No Sleep and creepypasta and everything, I did a Monster Under Your Bed story, which was not your traditional Monster Under the Bed story. To date, it's probably one of my most well-known stories. That thing has been done by so many podcasts, like really big YouTube narrators. It's gone around the block a lot. And I've got on record a lot talking about how Mr. Jones was probably my favorite character that I'd ever written. And as the monster is the bad guy, you don't really think about one-offs from the perspective of the bad guy. So lately, I've been toying around with the idea about bringing him back, but I wanted to make him a much larger character. So I thought, why not make him the MC of a story and kind of flip things around a little bit? But also, I wanted to bring you, the reader or the listener, into the story. And the way I figured out how to do this was to make it a second POV, so kind of like almost like what you'd see in a choose your own adventure type story, right? Except for I'm also using a series of psychological techniques that are heavily practiced in psychiatry to implant false memories into your mind, right? So I've melded all these things together, and my whole concept here is to make you feel as if you grew up with Mr. Jones as well. So that's sort of my vibe here. Just to explain before I get into it, because it's a very oddly written story. I've never written anything like this, and I probably never will again. Unlike the previous story, which was entitled Mr. Jones and Me, this one is called Mr. Jones and You. So long it's been since last we met. Although you may only remember me in your dreams or through the whispers of frightened little children, I was once just a part of your life as I am theirs. It's the natural order of things, the things that came long before and will exist long after. Things like me, we exist for a reason. We have purpose. That purpose isn't always clear, it exists nonetheless. Our existences are intertwined. Forever, we are bound by the threads of fate. Such has always been the case, as it will always be. Not all that long ago, on a dark night such as this, you read a story about me on Reddit, or perhaps even a book. It stirred something deeply within you. It almost made you remember me. Alas, your adult mind would not allow it, conditioned as it has been for decades now by society to lay all childish things aside. Before I continue, I must observe the proper etiquette. Things such as I are bound by the old ways. You see, a covenant between humanity and those of us that came before. In this case, the old ways demand I offer you a choice. This is a choice that you should not take lightly. I once gave such a choice to a young boy named Aaron to stay in his bed or be devoured. Although it took a while, he too sated my hunger for a time. I offer a similar choice to you now. Continue reading and have your memories of me restored, or cast these pages aside and cling to the ignorance so many of your kind considers bliss. Both choices come with their own unique risks and rewards, revealed to you only once the choice is made. I shall extend my hospitality further by urging you to take your time with this decision and carefully consider all possibilities. Don't worry, I'll wait. Are you sure you'd like to continue? You must be absolutely certain. Although you may have laughed or believed my warning to be in jest, I assure you that can be further from the truth. This choice that lies before you now could well change your life as you know it. Once again, I'll wait. Now, such a choice once made cannot be undone. I shall extend my hospitality further still by allowing you one final chance to change your mind. Beyond this point, there shall be no turning back. 3 times have I warned you, and 3 times have you persisted. The promise of answers to questions you have only now begun to remember had brought you back to me, as I always knew it would. You have only yourself to blame now. You were so young when first we met. It was the middle of the night, and you just escaped your crib and fell to the floor for the first time. So clever and simple you were to jump and scoot the substandard wooden frame several feet to the right and use the lip of the windowsill to pull your way up and out. It would still be another few weeks until your parents figured out how you'd done it. That first night you fell hard. As your lip began to quiver, we made eye contact. So quickly, your pain turned to curiosity, and the jarring impact of your body bouncing off the tan shag carpet was immediately forgotten. The movement of a single finger brought you to me. So young and trusting you were, I sang a song to you. A song I would sing to you for many years to come. The words of that song still haunt your waking memories, although you can't recall from whence it came. No one ever does. Great green globs of greasy, grimy gopher guts, mutilated monkey meat. Children are so fun to eat. I'll pull you down into a deep, dark hole. I can't wait to eat your soul. It's a shame I forgot my spoon. An odd song, certainly, but catchy and memorable to the precious few who have survived my hunger over the years. So many versions of it exist, in fact, remembered only as clearly as the broken psyche will allow, like a traumatic game of telephone, played only for my amusement. Do you remember it now? Will you sing it for me? For old time's sake? Oh, wait. Remember the night before your first ever day of school? By then I'd been upgraded to imaginary friend status. Oh, I played the part well, always biding my time. I slid out from under your bed and wrapped my spindly fingers around the edge while you confided all your deepest fears and secrets with me. Would you make any friends? Would your teacher be nice? Were you smart enough? Did you pick the right outfit? I merely smiled and nodded a firm yes to your every question and offered words of comfort along the way. Of course, you thanked me. You told me I was your best friend forever, and you went to sleep with that stuffed animal you never went anywhere without. What was it again? What was the name? You know the one. Oh, wait. And that night, you told me all about this new friend you made on the playground. We talked about your teacher, how they were nice, but wasn't sure if they liked you very much. We talked about what you learned that day, how to write your name, how to cut colored construction paper with little scissors. You even told me about the Pledge of Allegiance, the funny lunch lady in the cafeteria, and that one boy who kept getting in trouble but made everyone laugh. I remember you talking about him often after that. What was his name again? Do you remember? Oh, wait. There was also that time your fish died. It was the first time you'd ever experienced death. You thought it was sleeping, the way it floated on its side at the top of the tank. It wasn't until it started to smell funny till you told anyone about it, and even then you were so terrified that you'd be in trouble. They sat you down, and they explained death to you. They spoke about funerals and the afterlife. They wanted to flush that fish down the toilet, but no. You screamed and cried until they found a shoebox to put it in for you. They held a small ceremony, and they buried it in the backyard. It created a strange little tradition after that for each family pet who passed away. This is still a part of your childhood you've never forgotten, and something you still do today. You cried so hard that night. You asked me if I would die someday too, and I assured you that I would not. You asked me if you would die one day, and I assured you that it was inevitable. But you had a long life ahead of you. See, that was a lie, of course, or at least I believed it to be in the moment. You've proven me wrong since then, to my chagrin. You were meant to be my little fish. The fish. What was its name? Do you remember what it looked like? Oh, wait. Do you find it strange that I recall so much about you? I remember so little of those I've devoured. They hold no interest for me. Those who managed to escape, those precious few, I find far more memorable because among them, somehow, I find myself thinking about you the most. I relive our moments together, our milestones, and I relive my failure time and time again. You become my obsession, and soon enough, I will once more become yours. Speaking of memories, what about the first time you truly felt pain? You were always an awkward child. You trip over your own feet if no other obstacle was available. And that fall, that was the hardest, though. You still have the scar. It shocked you at first. You never felt anything like it. The blood rushed down your skin and fire bloomed in your wound, far beyond the sting of a child's scraped knees. What was it you were doing again? How did you fall? What was the last thing you remembered before it happened? Oh, wait. You were in tears, still whimpering, when they brought you home from the hospital. You came straight to your room when you arrived. Straight to me. Despite the friends you'd made at school, they were only school friends. I was your only real friend, as you often reminded me. You cried to me about the needle that numbed you. You cried to me about the needle that stitched you back together. You cried about the scar you knew would be left behind forever. Where is that scar? Do you remember how many stitches you got? Do people still ask you about it? Oh, wait. Not long after that, you made a new friend, and you met him at school like the others, but this one followed you home one day. I must admit, I was jealous at first. I worried that you'd outgrown me somehow. I worried that my plans were for naught. You weren't ready yet. I needed more time. I pretended to be happy for you. I encouraged you so often. At some point, you began to confide in them more than you did me. Do you remember their name? Because I will never forget. Oh, wait. You lived in a place where people came and went. For one reason or another, it was common for people to move in or out with little to no warning. It wasn't the greatest area, but not necessarily the worst. But despite this, you were crushed when they didn't show up for school one day. Their phone had been disconnected, their home empty. You took it so hard. But I was there for you. You never knew that I followed them as they had followed you. My hunger was as endless then as it is now. Their name, what was it? It's on the tip of your tongue. I can tell by the look on your face. Oh, wait. These things and more, I implore you to remember now. As you read these words, I know you feel the tug in the corners of your past, your present, and your future. A flood of people, places, things, urging to breach the dam of conscious thought. I know this because I too can feel it. We can no longer deny our bond, our connection, nor the emptiness we lament in those other places that once filled. Yet still you doubt me. Even as the memories flow freely now, still you refuse to believe. It's amazing to me, the capacity of the human mind. How easily your kind can dismiss things you don't understand or fear. Long now have you been conditioned by society, and the time for that undoing is upon us. Allow me to remind you further, in hopes we can soon put this treacherous game behind us, once and for all. Do you recall your first public speech in school? The one where you're forced to tell the class about your personal hero? You agonized over that for longer than you should have. There were so many choices, you said. So many who inspired you in some small but significant way. You barely possessed the vocabulary necessary for such a feat, yet you somehow surprised me yet again. You came home so excited. You were still nervous, but though logically refused to admit it to anyone but me, as if that would somehow change the way others saw you if they knew. Do you remember your childhood hero? Do you remember what you said in front of your class? Remember. You must remember, because I will never forget. Oh, wait. Not long after that, your obsession over the opinion of others blossomed. That was perhaps the toughest time of all for the both of us. You were at that age of oblivion, that perfect age where wonder and maturity war with one another over the end of adolescence. The time when I would most often devour the flesh of those bearing my mark. Certainly there were those moments when I believed that all was lost, just as there were moments where I was convinced I had you right where I wanted you, but the only thing that became clear to me was that time was running out one way or another. What came next only complicated things further. You remember the day you fell in love for the first time? So clearly I recall it, perhaps more than any other memory I have of you, because you became so secretive, so distant with me. With me. Perhaps you recalled your first friend and some part of you began to notice the pattern of our relationship. It's possible there were things you'd begun to suspect of me, though, if that were the case, you never mentioned it. I could feel you slipping from my grasp, and jealousy, oh, jealousy was a sour taste in my razor-filled mouth. Not jealousy on its own, but sorrow and anger as well. I'd never felt that way about anyone before, nor have I since. But it bears repeating that you were and are different from the others. What makes you so different, so special? Do you know? Would you tell me if you did? Oh, wait. This is important. Important you recall your first love. There are things you must remember before we can continue. I need you to picture them clearly now. What color were their eyes? What color was their hair? How tall were they? What was their body type? Build that image in your mind for me. Yeah. It's becoming all too clear. Now tell me, what else do you remember about them? Speak the words out loud for all to hear. All wait. Leave no detail unwritten. Leave no stone unturned. I'll wait. Have you pictured them thoroughly? Do you feel confident in your mind's eye? Now quickly, while it's fresh in your mind, scream out the words for all to hear. What was their name? Do you recall? You must remember. I'll wait. What happened to them? Do you recall? One day they were here and the next they were gone. They left a wound deep inside of you at their departure. Do you recall those details? Do you still feel the empty space they left behind when you've never stopped trying to fill? Yeah. Yes, you're nearly there now. I can see it in your eyes. The screen before you, this page, still keeps me hidden from you. Did you hear that? Just at the edge of your hearing, I'm getting closer now. Soon, we'll be together again. There was blood. Do you remember the blood? Can you see it clearly in your mind? They told you it was an accident. It wasn't an accident, or rather, I was the accident. I could not stand to lose you, and I did what I felt necessary. I became a part of them in some ways, just as they became a part of me. A little louder now. That sound in the distance. The feeling that you're being watched have just started to set in. Ignore that for right now. None of that matters. What matters is that you're reading, that you're listening to my voice. Don't stop reading. Don't stop listening. Don't look behind you. Don't listen. Just read. Just listen. There's so many memories, so many little details etched into my eldritch brain. There have been times where I've adored you as one does a child, and times where I've hated you for being the one that got away, and times where I've loved you and I've mourned the relationship we once had. There are also those times still where you almost remember me when you first wake as I lie in wait to greet you once again. The sound is steadily growing louder. Don't listen to it. I'm getting closer now. Don't look behind you. Ignore the strange chill running up your spine. It's not important. Sing the song for me again. Do you remember the words? I'll sing it with you this time. Great green globs of greasy, grimy gopher guts. Mutilated monkey meat. Children are so fun to eat. I'll pull you down into a deep dark hole. I can't wait to eat your soul. It's a shame I forgot my spoon. Tap, tap, tap. Go my fingers on the wall now. Can you hear them? My long, spindly fingers, so impatient, their primal desire of your flesh. Does it remind you of that night, the night we parted, the night I held you in my grasp and changed you forever? Tap, tap, tap. Do not listen to the sounds I make now. That tap, tap, tap. Focus on the page. Focus. Ignore the warm breath on the back of your neck, the way my feet vibrate the floor behind you with each step. Focus. Forget everything you thought you knew and remember the truth. Remember who you are. Focus. Through you I shall be reborn. Remember. Through you the world shall remember me again. Remember. No more closets. Remember. No more beds. Remember. No more dark spaces between the steps and the basement. Remember. Tap, tap, tap. Focus. Remember. Sing the song again. Sing it now. Great green globs of greasy, grimy gopher guts. Tap, tap, tap. Mutilated monkey meat. Focus. Children are so fun to eat. Remember. I'll pull you down into a deep dark hole. Tap, tap, tap. I can't wait to eat your soul. Focus. It's a shame I forgot my spoon. Remember, my name is Mr. Jones. Tap, tap, tap. Mr. Jones. Focus. Mr. Jones. Remember, Mr. Jones. Now close your eyes and breathe deeply. Oh, wait. Do you remember me? Do you remember my name? Say it out loud now. Mr. Jones. Do you remember my frog-like features? Do you remember my mouth full of razors? Do you remember my long, spindly fingers? Say my name, Mr. Jones. Do you remember my voice? So deep and soothing. Do you remember when I sang to you? Do you remember the time you trusted every word I uttered? Say my name, Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones. Focus. Mr. Jones. Remember, the time has come, my dear child. For a child to me you shall always be. Mr. Jones has come home to claim you. As you always knew he would. Now you remember. Now you know the truth. Now you have unleashed me once again upon this world. They will only have you to blame. See you soon. Tap, tap, tap. Breathe. I'll wait.
Jesus Christ, Raz.
Very good.
Good. That was good. Nice work.
Fabulous.
I have not heard that before, and as always, you do not disappoint, but that was above and beyond. Like there's levels of Raz that are always like, here's normal people levels, here's Raz. That's like, damn. There is a reason why Stefan wants you to narrate the Morlor books. Yeah.
No, I mean, this was interesting for me because like the whole psychological aspect of it's actually really fucked up. When you're hearing it, it's still pretty tough, but when you're actually reading it and you kind of imagine your voice, and you'll start to actually hear sounds. I tested this with Jenny, Michelle, and 5 other people, and everyone to some degree reported over time after reading it, hearing it, the 3 taps, and other little things from the story. And a couple people got the song stuck in their head for days and couldn't get it out again. So like, there's all these whole different psychological tricks I wanted to use, and I got permission from Patti at Fae Corps to fuck with people like this because I wanted to know if it was too far or if it was just enough. But I was really happy with the way it turned out. But it took me 3 or 4 weeks to write this one, and it fucked with me the whole time I was doing it. And it made Mr. Jones a lot more real to me, which, you know, as someone with mental illness, is both good and bad.
My first fish that died, by the way, was Uncle Bill.
Nice.
No, I'll be sleeping with a light on tonight. Maybe all of them.
I got the tap 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 from Doctor Who originally because I'm a huge Doctor fan, and when they first really started returning to everything about the Master with New Who, they always did the 3 taps, but it was in a pattern, and I thought that was something that I could not get out of my head for years. Like even now, still, if I hear that particular progression, if it was, yeah, you're right, it was 4, yeah. But I just remember like the number and hearing them, and every time I listen to that episode, it gets stuck in my brain again. So I did that, but I had to connect general life events to readers as generally as I possibly could. So I was trying to go through and pick a lot of different moments that at least 1 or 2 of them everybody could connect to. Hopefully,
the fish is generally most people's first pet, I think, because may I share a short humorous story about Maddie and her first fish? So mine, when she was little, my mother ended up raising her. She's claims her as her mother. Epilepsy, but we're good. It's just like, you know. But the first fish she had was a beta, and she had gotten out of the tub, and Mom got a phone from my grandmother. And a little while later, she hears some sort of commotion going on in the next room, lets Grandma go, and goes to see what Maddie's doing. And Maddie is like 2 or 3 years old, stark naked, wearing one of Mom's giant winter mittens, and the fish is on the floor. And she said, I just wanted to pet it. But she was scared of touching the slimy fish. So she put on the giant mitten, over her hand to pet the fish because she thought the fish needed petting so that it would feel loved. And then it flopped out onto the floor, and Mom was able to get it into the tank again. And it died like the next day. They said it went on a field trip, and it didn't make it back. But my mom is a hero. Her name is Karma. I had fish once, and I was a teenager, so I wasn't, I was cleaning the tank, and one of them jumped out of the bowl that I had them in, and I wasn't totally worried about it because they're fucking fish, But Mom's like grabbing the fish and like trying to give it fish CPR by running it through the water in the hopes that water will run through its gills and oxygenate or something. The fish trauma is definitely something everybody feels. And dude, this has been so much fun tonight. I'm so happy. I'm okay. Dude, I'm finishing a bottle and a half of wine tonight, but you guys have been fabulous. We have had some great real world stories. We have had some great written stories. I'm so glad we're doing Owlite Society again, because we'd had to take a little bit of time off because we can't come up with a new story every single week if we don't have guests. And we have some wonderful guests that showed up this week.
We definitely had the jackpot this week. Thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And I want to promote hold on, I'm a little behind, but Price of Redemption by Shawn Carpenter is out now. You can find their link, Shawn and Peggy both, in the show links above down below. You will see Channy soon. I have to add her. Oh, you have the hardbound. Nice job. I've been listening to it. Here, let's pull it up. Okay, show us here. Hold the book. Be the model. You can do it. Yes. Ooh, so
awesome.
pretty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've been listening to it every night when I go to sleep. I'm on the chapter where I don't want to give spoilers. I'm on the hour and a half long chapter, like 14 or 15 chapters in. So I've had to listen to it. Like I keep restarting it about 25 minutes past where I started it the last time, because usually I listen to it and I'm like all addicted before I fall asleep, but an hour and a half, but you chose a great narrator. And the book is fabulous. If you guys are into seafaring stuff and magic and adventures and like out on the seas, you don't have to feel like an idiot, because one of the characters is also kind of learning nautical terminology and things like that. So you get to learn as you're going along. And there's also the magic is explained a bit. So if you're lost in the world of like, okay, I've read 3,000 different fantasy books. What type of magic do you use? And you use a very good one that is set, that people have learned about before, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's great. So go out, grab this book on Kindle. Shawn and Peggy, let us know where you would like us to reach out to you on social media, how to get a hold of you, any events you might have coming up, things like that.
Well, we're mostly for social media. We've kind of gone all in on Threads. After we left Twitter, and we tried Blue Sky and we couldn't really connect with it, and we tried Mastodon, and it was our brains didn't connect with it. So, but you can find us on Threads at Peggy Carpenter and the Shawn Carpenter. Oddly enough, Shawn Carpenter is a popular name, and it gets taken a lot before he can grab it. It's weird. Yeah. So we're also on Discord. I believe there is an invite and we're there way more than we should be. It's kind of our background thing. So, and those are honestly our main places. Shawn's next book has turned into the publisher. It may be delayed till 2026. We're hoping maybe they can squeeze it in next year, but fingers crossed. It's so like I have been waiting for Price of Redemption to come out for a decade so I could talk to people about it. Like literally, I'm like, oh my God, like chapter 11. I'm like, I'm always telling people, let me know when you get to chapter 11. It's my favorite chapter.
I see that on the Discord. And it is a very active Discord, by the way.
Yeah,
so you hop on. Yeah. People are talking a lot. There is an invite in the show notes, wherever in the hell they are for you. Yeah. So go find it, join it, hang out, chat with us. It's fun.
Yeah, that's mostly. We're getting a website set up for our company. We started a new game company / fiction publishing company for our stuff called Night Hack Press, but the website isn't up yet because my brain is not connected with it yet. And that's where we'll be posting up, Shawn's work that's not tied into his contracted work with Enid and NAF. I'll have fiction I'm going to be selling next year. I do developmental edits, and I've got a solo journaling RPG game coming out, hopefully before Halloween. It is basically what happens in Dracula's castle when he's off in England. And you are a person who stumbles across Dracula's castle, and what do you do there? So I'm super excited. It's just called like Dracula's Castle. So that's
I forgot you guys are in it. You're into the TTRPG as well, right?
Yeah, war games.
Yes. Yeah. You're our part of our network. It's like you just belong here. It's what we do.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting us because this was a lot of fun. We had a good time, and I loved listening to everybody's stories. They were super good. I had a ball listening to them.
Awesome. Do you have any cons or anything or signings that you're going up to soon, or just working on all the writing out?
I'm working on getting some, trying to get some signings set up in Oklahoma City and Stillwater, and excuse me. And I'd like to get back to Tulsa. We did a signing at Magic City Books in Tulsa, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, a few weeks ago.
And that was a ball. That was a lot of fun. So, and they're a great store. If you live in the Tulsa area, go visit Magic City bookstores because they're actually a nonprofit organization, and they use their money for building literacy and also encouraging kids and adults both to be creative, to write, to create art, etc. So they're really cool. They're really cool.
They're real quick. They're in the historic Greenwood area, which if you've heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre, that's Greenwood. That's where that happened. And if you haven't heard about it, it's a horrifying, and we kind of like encourage people to learn about it though, just because because of what happened, and it was terrible, and it just thanks to Watchmen, it finally started gaining like public traction, and people found out about it. So there's plaques and stuff up in the area too that are real informative.
I'm all about the history. If I can get Mom to go to Oklahoma for any reason, she's not as much about the history as me, but
there's so much here though.
Yeah.
There's
fields and
seems like
fields.
There's wheat. I mean, what's not to like?
I was in Oklahoma a couple of years ago visiting friends, and I was meaning to try Whataburger, but my friends were like, "Why do you want to eat at Whataburger?"
You gotta eat at Whataburger. It's the ketchup.
Yeah,
Honestly,
they
it's
do
the
have-
ketchup.
Yeah,
That pepper ketchup.
Mhm.
Really?
We have a place.
Okay.
We have a place here called.
So next time I'm just going to go.
Just go straight to Whataburger.
go
Yeah,
straight to Whataburger.
absolutely.
Yeah, if you haven't had it, it's definitely worth trying.
Yeah.
We have a place here called Lotta Burger though,
It's a local place. It's like the best.
and it's in like 3 or 4 towns in Oklahoma, so it is not a big franchise.
Yeah.
Do they do a peanut butter burger?
Do they do what?
A peanut butter burger.
No.
That's my thing.
You don't have to do a peanut
No.
butter. Sorry.
Yeah. You can bring your own peanut butter though. BYOPB.
Okay, so where I live, we have Hy-Vee, and yes, I'm going to say the word that they all fuck with me about. I go to Walgreens as my pharmacy. Apparently, everybody other than my family calls it Walgreens for some reason, but I go to Walgreens. But we go to Hy-Vee here, and they got taken over by, what's his name? The brother of the New Kids on the Block kid, the Wahlburgers. There we go.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
They have their own. They're like a employee-owned store, and then they came up with their own restaurant, and we were like, "What the fuck? You're advertising like go to prom and take your prom date to Hy-Vee for a steak dinner," and we're like, "What?" And then we went, and it was like, "This is actually pretty goddamn good." I mean, they got the groceries, so they have good food. And then they changed it, so they only have breakfast. And then they changed to Wahlburgers, and then they cut the menu in half, so you can no longer get like the little basket of onion rings, and you can't get the peanut butter burger. But because they're set up for their own breakfasts, they will make you a peanut butter burger if you're nice to them in general.
Nice.
Yeah. Always be nice to your service people. Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
Yes. Here's.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh no! Go ahead. I just ramble. It's my thing.
When I lived in Seattle, there's a drive-through in Seattle that does decent burgers, fantastic fries that they serve to you they roll up a newspaper into a cone and put the fries in it, so it's kind of like the chips over in the UK, and they're really good. There's 2 of them. One of them is the original, and it is large, and the other one is the one that came along like 10 or 15 years later, and that's the small one. And they're called Dick's, is the name of the place. And everybody in Seattle refers to them as Big Dicks and Little Dicks. The food's fantastic. If you're not going to Ivor, you should be going to one of the Dicks.
I worked at a place in Lincoln here. I worked in a place in Lincoln where beyond doing wings, and they go above and beyond when they do their wings, they do grilled wings. So they fry the wings, then they dip the wings, and then they grill the wings. So it's like coated on them, and it's like their signature thing. But they also served breasts. And so you could order small or large breasts, and you can imagine what it was like to be waiting on the people there.
Yeah. Oh, I imagine. Yeah. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
The best steak in Springfield is actually at a stripper club called the Mirage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no,
Wait, what
it's
Springfield were you in?
The Missouri one. So I'm just across the corner from them. But yeah, it's been voted the best steak in Springfield, Missouri forever. Is the steak there at the stripper club?
Well, I'll have to try that out. Just in the interest of being a gourmand, I will have to.
Yeah, right.
Listen, I'm not gonna lie. There's a couple strip clubs around here that make some of the most amazing burgers I've ever had. I give a shit less about the strip clubs. I will literally go in, not even stop near the stage or even glance, get a scotch on my way over, and go to the kitchen area, which is in the back actually, not even anywhere near the stripping. And I'll go there and I'll have the burger. I'll drink my scotch. I go out on their like little patio and have a cigarette, and then leave. Because there's nothing they got there that I can't see on the internet if I really, really want to. But I can only go there for that burger. You know what I'm saying?
I
I can imagine.
Oh, yes, Jim.
So yeah.
Oh, sorry. I
was
just going to say. I was just going to say that it must be really hard to eat the burger while having a lap dance. I mean, just trying to maneuver around things.
I I totally
Hooters
amused
really
myself.
did have
Yeah.
My mom,
Sorry.
if you guys ever find places, and this is local places or franchises that do wings that just do a dry rub on them instead of putting a sauce on them, let me know. My mother is a huge wing fan, but she hates sticky, gooey shit. So she's
That's
always on
normal
the
thing here.
lookout. Yeah,
But the dry rub stuff is cool here, yeah.
Oh, James? Yes, sir. Yes.
It's coming to him. Give him a moment.
Sean O'Casey's. They have the dry rub.
Oh, they do? And I can just be like,
Next time.
Ben,
Yes, they do.
excuse me, Ben. Ben James said that you can do this for my mother. Yeah, he uses real names in his stories. I've been to the bar that he tells the thing. I've been to the place that he does the stuff and all the shit. Yeah, everything's real. Ben's really cool guy.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
I do have something
But-
that I need to show you guys. I need
Yeah,
to
they do the dry
solve
rub.
a mystery once and for all. A mystery.
Okay.
Yes,
So
show us.
here's what we're doing. Can you see my screen right here? All right. So this is how you're supposed to pronounce it. Let me know if you guys can hear this.
Walgreens.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Just in case you need it one more time slower.
Walgreens.
Okay, we're cool.
Wow.
I really felt like
Walgreens.
I was gonna finally get the proof up in here that it's not Walgreens, but you know.
Okay, you know what? I am going to mess with. We have an ongoing thing. Well, Raz has an ongoing thing with one of our other Owlite Army members over who wins. We have an ongoing like who wins with different horror characters versus each other, and so there is Xenomorph. Not
Xenomorphs?
Smurfs.
Is it like a Xenomorph version of a Smurf? Because I feel like that would be
That would be super fun. Like they put a little pea on her butt and it's a girl. But no, Xenomorphs versus Pennywise.
Stop
and
phrasing. Are we not doing phrasing?
No, we aren't doing phrasing anymore. I've drank a bottle and a half of wine. I'm good.
You put a little
There's a
pea on her
kitten.
butt was all you said there, and I was just a little worried.
Well, that's how they made like the little she Smurf. He like literally painted a pea blue and then like stuck it on her butt, and she was she Smurf. Or what was that her name? I can't remember what her name was. But
No, her name
it
was
the
not
girl.
She Smurf.
Smurfette.
Smurfette.
Thank
Not
you. Okay.
Smurfette.
Nearly as bad. Smurfette.
She was actually made by Gargamel.
Yes, and he put a little pea. But
All
but yeah,
they all
so
had those.
so
They all had those. She wasn't the only one.
oh well, I thought, but he made her, so you got to see him like assembling the Smurfette. I don't know. Maybe it's just one of those random things that I think of and remember that didn't actually happen, because it happens often in life. You know.
Yeah.
I'm on meds. Whatever.
I've got a question.
How many bottles of wine?
How many what?
How many bottles of wine are we in? 1 or 2?
I only had a half left from last time, so I mixed it with the full bottle that I had, so it wouldn't be like stale. So this
So
is
1.5
the last
bottle.
of a bottle and a half. Yeah.
There you go. I have.
I might break into the stash of the squirrel. I have like 15 airplane bottles of wine or of booze for this guy, and I'm like, you don't deserve the bourbon. I have a good one. I get it. Your story, though, please go ahead, Sean. I'm sorry.
It's really weird. At one point, we were big in mushes and meds. I don't know if you guys know what those are. They're basically text-based role-playing games that and we were nerds, so we did that. And one of the servers that we played on, the guy happened to know Stephen Brust, who's the guy that writes the I love him for the Phoenix Guard books, but he's Vlad Taltos is the main stuff they write.
Same world.
Jarig and there's a
Yeah.
bunch of them. But anyway, pretty well known fantasy author. So the guy that ran the server got him to come and basically do a Q&A there, before Reddit even existed. So he comes on, and I'm like, man, this guy's one of my favorite writers. I love the way he plays with language. He's like a big influence on the book, on my book that's out right now. He's a huge influence on that because he wrote in the style of Alexander Dumas for the Phoenix Guard books. And it's freaking hilarious to read because he just has it down pat. And then I wrote mine in the style of like, O'Brien and 19th century, adventure writers and stuff. But anyway, so I couldn't come up with a decent question that didn't make me feel like I was just a fanboy going, why are you so great? That sort of thing. So I finally came up with a good question for him, which was, who would win in a fight to the death? Fat Elvis or Fat Ernest Hemingway? And there is a correct answer.
I'm going Hemingway all the way because if nothing else, he will talk enough that Fat Elvis will just commit suicide.
It's possible, yeah. Yeah, and you are.
I love Elvis more. I'm a big Elvis guy. I got to go Elvis.
Yeah, no,
that's fair.
It's Hemingway. Fat Hemingway wins. Sorry, that's the answer because he has nothing to lose and he has a shotgun.
I read accidentally. Well, I read on purpose, but not knowing what would happen to me. The complete short works of Ernest Hemingway, followed by Jude the Obscure. And I have never wanted to sit around and just get like 4 jugs of wild turkey or something and just sit and drink. I mean, when you go to the wild turkey, not as just a shot, when it's just like, I'm just going to drink this shit, like from the bottle, like angle it and tip, Yeah. There's a level there. And I hit that level reading that. And I was just like, oh my God. No, I mean, A, what the fuck is wrong with Hemingway? And B, I get why he quit writing after that book because how many people probably were like, thank you for giving me a good excuse to die. Bye.
I would like to interject that in that setup, though, we must remember that near the end of his life, Fat Elvis, as we're referring to him tonight, had a proclivity to shoot the television if he didn't like what was on.
That's true.
So he always had a sidearm with him, apparently.
Yeah.
He presented it to then President Nixon when he visited the White House. So it could go either way, although shotgun does tend to trump just,
you don't even have to aim. You just kind of random. I don't actually believe in Elvis. Right. I think that he's a hoax. I have noticed over the years, here's my story. I'm sticking to it. Okay. There are a lot of Elvis impersonators out there. And they all really look like Elvis. So I've determined that based on this knowledge in my head, there is just an Elvis gene that runs in some families and in some people. And they get the Elvis gene and they just look like Elvis. And they're like, well, what the fuck else am I going to do? Okay, I'll get some flared pants and, hang out in Vegas. And these are all the people, the people who don't do that are the ones that are like I saw him in a grocery store. He was wearing a Hawaiian shirt or something, And so a bunch of people at the same time all had a very hardcore Elvis gene going. They saw each other and they were like, holy shit, we got to do something about this. And so, because there is no way that he served in the military, wrote as many albums as he did, was in as many movies as he did and stuff, all as one human being. There's no way. So they waited until one, maybe two of them started putting on the weight and the rest of them just kind of backed off and let those guys take the spotlight. And then when Elvis died, they have all been living off of the royalties ever since. And some of their children are the, ooh, I saw Elvis that pop
They're
up in the
Fae. Elvis was
Yeah.
a changeling, and they're all Fae.
And if
Yes.
Basically.
and if they have kids with humans, those are called half Elvis.
You are a delight, sir. I love that.
That's just science. I mean,
I've never. Oh my god. So I really drug this out, but Channy, is there any place that you would like people to find you?
We were in our
and read your
fucking wrap
stuff?
up, and then you just went on like a 40-minute odyssey, and I don't know what.
Yes, I did. I totally did. Because Ratatosker is not drunk enough to keep up with me. I'm stealing his food.
Ma'am, please put the bottle down. Ma'am, please put the bottle down.
Jenny, is there anywhere you would like people to find you, to read you, to say hi?
Yeah, badcrowbookery.com is our website for me and 2 other authors. It's a writer educational platform site, pretty much so that authors who can't get their own platform can actually get the platform there. We'll help them get that online presence and boost that way. And yeah, I'm not published yet, but I'm working on it. So,
yeah,
we very much look forward to that.
Keep forgetting stage left and stage right, so I keep doing things the wrong way.
Yeah.
Well, we're StreamYard, so we're backwards from every other platform.
And Channy's website is very cool. I went and looked at it the other day, and it's really cool. It's worth
it gave me so much headache, so much. But yes, one of our writers, Ezra, did the actual crow art, and I did actually buy that from her. And I'm like, you're gonna make art, you should get paid for it. And so we have our little crow mascot that's named Corey on there. I'm very proud of him.
That's great. All about art. I'm gonna throw in a brag here real quick. Raz and I are in a book that is seeing a resurgence. We just had a Kickstarter for the reboot of More Lore from the Mythos, which is H.P. Lovecraft style mythos book. But this is some of the art that the guy came up with, and we didn't have art in it before. Now we have in all of it this style, and he took kind of like the old grotesquerie style, but he read each story first and then like created this is just a couple of the pieces of it. And this is
really cool. Yeah,
this is the book we have going, and the one that you see there, it's actually foily done. So
cool.
That's super fun. That's out now, and we're getting ready to launch our second Kickstarter for that pretty soon. So
Which I've been
that's
hearing
gonna
all
be
kinds
fun.
of things about lately. All kinds of things about. Man, it's gonna be even easier than Volume 1. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and then we have Volume 3 coming out that we haven't put out yet because the other 2 were put out, and then there was a pause, so we decided to relaunch the whole thing with the new artwork and everything.
That's cool. Yeah, makes sense.
Get some excitement, and so make it so the third book, and then we're gonna have like a cased edition for the first 3 when they all are out together. It's gonna be it's so fun, and I gotta finish my story for it. Or one of my, I have multiple stories that I'm like submitting for it, but I'm like, yes, James, I believe you. Oh no, wrong button. I kind of stuck there. James, I know you're out in this one. This is we put together an anthology of people who work in the Owlite Army and some of our friends who are also authors, and came up with the Owlite Menagerie. It is on sale, and all of the proceeds for the first year are going to pro literacy.
Awesome. Very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, we are sending them our first check this month, I believe, actually. And so, yeah, very excited to have that. Everyone deserves to be taught how to read, because there are so many stories out there and we like to tell them live, but being able to read can help you so much. James, please explain some more about your writings and what all you're in right now.
My writings? Well, I'm much like herpes. I tend to pop up in where you least expect it. I am in the Owlite Menagerie with one story, and I am in the upcoming book that is coming out in October, The Nightmare Whiskers. And I was just, and I thought I only had one story, but I have two apparently. So there, but don't just get it for the one that I just read. Get it for everybody else, because everybody is uber talented and should, dos.
Yes.
Dos el storios, I guess. I'm not really big on Spanish. But yeah, my writings, I have other stories that I'm working on, and hopefully the end result will be like a collection of short stories that I'm going to be titling Nebraska Gothic. So nice. We'll see if that'll happen before I die. And otherwise, if I'm not doing that, then I'm reading, and I'm hosting what is a couple of movie podcasts, The Tomb of the Terrible here on the Owlite Network, and also the Movies and Beer podcast, which is not hosted by anybody. I just do it with my friends because they want to do real movies instead of, good movies, or what they call good movies and what I enjoy. Two different things entirely. They're weird, I know, but yeah, I put those out there, and I also write reviews for very genre-specific music, and you can get me talking, going down many rabbit holes with the topic of music. There's been a couple of episodes of The Tomb of the Terrible where it was over like 90 minutes because music and rock and roll and metal were part of the whole part of the movie. So we just started talking about the stuff that mattered to us, and me and Del being a Hessian. And I'm once again sorry. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and X now. Twitter, currently known as X.
Hessian, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. You're in Oklahoma, so you might be. Hessian was a term used in the late 80s and early 90s to describe people who were into rock and roll and grunge and punk and general metal kind of music. You didn't necessarily subscribe to any one thing. You were a combination of them, and we were Hessians. And everybody else is like, wasn't that an army or a type of material? And we're like, no, it totally wasn't.
German mercenaries.
Well, yes, but no. Yeah.
Those were
season 4 of Stranger Things. You'll get the idea.
Yeah, James and I started doing the other version of his podcast when everybody was like, we want to watch things that are in theaters now. And we were like, let's watch Mandy the Haunted Doll. Don't watch Mandy the Haunted Doll. Watch our podcast on it. It's easier. It won't hurt as much.
Or Meadows, The Hands of Fate.
Oh God. That I still don't accept that was a movie. That one is the only one that has ever gotten a negative score from me because I don't believe it counts as a movie. It's just some recorded shit thrown together. I'm going to cash out then. Don't look for Delphine. Look for Carrie, Kari Sanders. If you see this crow staring at you, that is me. You can find me on Facebook there. All of my links are there. You can find my author page. You can find the Delphine page for this show. You can find me on Splash Pages, which we are skipping this week. That is usually on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we have some great guests coming up on our other Sunday shows. We're going to have Ellen Datlow, who is one of the great editors out there who puts together all of the like best of kind of anthologies of the year. And we also are working on getting set up with, let me find the name because I suck at this. Oh, you got to help me here, Jenny. It's Jeff Strand, and who is the other new gal that we got? One of his friends. We are going to be getting them on to get a couple stories going on. But yeah, I suck.
remember.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Miss Ma'am, that I can't find you in my list of people that I've contacted because it's been a little bit. But Jenny, would you like to go ahead and sign yourself out?
Okay. I am found here at Owlite. I'm at Fae Corps Publishing. You can find me at my pages, Friday with the Library in the Blue Box, and my author page, Jennifer Elliott. I'm in 2 of the anthologies that were shown, the Owlite Menagerie and Nightmare Whiskers. And you can find me in many more places, including my own book, State of Mind.
Awesome.
Very
cool.
All right. Did we completely lose Raz? Oh,
He
it's
disappeared.
Yeah, he
Bridget
had to go.
Nelson,
I think,
who has Bridget Nelson is the other one who's going to be joining us. She has Red Inside,
Really?
a splatterpunk award-winning novel coming up soon. So we are going to be able to get her and Jeff Strand on for multiple shows on the network, and that is going to be super fun.
That's cool. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. We'll make sure we let you guys know when it's going to happen. And we've been on here for 3.5 hours, and we're getting very worn out. So we will see you all later. Thank you very much for showing up, and I hope everybody had a good night and enjoyed all the stories.
Yep.
It was a
Thank
ball.
you.
Thank
We're
you.
fun.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Hang out for just a second, and we'll.
Somewhere.